Welcome to Fantasy Audiobook. At the beginning, I swung my sword 1,000,000 times, and I shocked the whole school. Chapter 121. In the mind scene, the drunkenness is passing by little by little. When Lin Tian came to his senses, the date had already reached December 31st. Feeling that the host's drunkenness has subsided, he has automatically exited the Jujian immortal artistic realm. See this tip. Lin Tian withdrew from the artistic conception contentedly. During these few days, he swung his sword tens of thousands of times. The strength has been qualitatively improved again. But he still hasn't figured it out yet. It was the reward called Zushin Sword Soul that I got a few days ago. What exactly was it? Take it literally. Shouldn't that thing be attached to his wooden sword? But Lin Tian found out in the past few days. Except that the rewards obtained when swinging the sword become much more refined. Others, nothing changes. The wooden sword is still the same wooden sword as before. The two sword intents didn't mean to change in the slightest. With doubts, Lin Tian's eyes regained clarity, and his consciousness returned to his mind. But when he opened his eyes, what came into view was a huge ravine with a length of tens of thousands of meters. Even vertically moved half of the hills to flat ground. Lin Tian, a series of question marks popped up in his head. I wipe. In the past few days when he swung his sword in the mood. What happened in your mind? Did the people inside establish a dynasty and go to war? Something is wrong. It is impossible for such a thing to appear in my mind. Lin Tian hurriedly looked at several villages at the foot of the mountain. After finding that there was no change, I was also relieved. Relax. Let go of the hammer. Since there is no such thing as sending troops to the northern expedition in the village. Where did the sword mark come from? Could it be that when I swung the sword in the artistic conception, the main body accidentally cut it? That's even more wrong. Lin Tian only felt that his mind was a little messed up. This has never happened so many times before. In the end. Huzi. At this moment, a burst of naive breathing interrupted Lin Tian's thoughts. He trembled and looked back when he heard the sound. Do you have someone else in your heart? Think like this. When Lin Tian found that behind him, there was actually a cute girl lying on the ground, sound asleep. The whole person is not well. Where did this come from? Lin Tian looked at the barefoot girl in front of him, and didn't know what to say for a while. Host, don't panic, wait for this system to explain to you patiently. Close black lens bracket. I'll give you 2 minutes. Then I won't talk about it. Close black lens bracket. Then I won't listen. Lin Tian, system. Open black lens bracket. If you don't listen, the system will ignore you for the rest of your life. Close black lens bracket. All right, say what you say. Lin Tian was speechless. I really admire you. Open black lens bracket. Snort. Close black lens bracket. The system looked extremely arrogant. Open black lens bracket. The girl you saw was transformed by the sword soul of Jade Immortal that you possess. Close black lens bracket. Wait. When Lin Tian heard that the person in front of him was his sword soul of Zushin, he choked on his saliva several times. This is my sword soul. Yes, your comprehension ability is excellent. Close black lens bracket. Quote. Are you sure you didn't make a mistake? You are questioning the capabilities of this system. Close black lens bracket. Lin Tian, no wonder I didn't know what my reward was for so many days. It turns out that I turned into a human and ran outside to sleep. That works. The Zushin sword soul is slightly stronger than your current host. Close black lens bracket. Did I tell you? When the Zushin sword soul is attached to the host's sword, it will exert the effect of 1 + 1 greater than 2. Close black lens bracket. A very familiar routine. Lin Tian crossed his arms, looking as if he was like this. He nodded, and then asked. Let me guess, although this thing is currently stronger than me, the upper limit still depends on me, and the growth rate is linked to my strength. Host, you are so smart, you actually got the answer right. Close black lens bracket. But there is no reward. Close black lens bracket. I advise you to speak to me properly. Lin Tian replied with a smile. Opening square bracket. Congratulations to the host for successfully answering the question and receiving the reward. 0.1 ray of sword soul, forced voluntary gift. Lin Tian, fine. No matter how small a mosquito is, it is still meat. Open black lens bracket. Back to the topic. Close black lens bracket. The Zushin sword soul is here for you. You should be the other party's leader, do you understand? Close black lens bracket. Ah, Lin Tian nodded blankly. Despite her maturity, her mind is equivalent to that of a 3 or 4-year-old human child. Please treat her kindly and avoid breaking the law. Close black lens bracket. Lin Tian, hope to treat him well and understand. What the hell is this so-called illegal thing? Dude, I already have someone in mind. The main focus is pure love. Go ahead and conquer your first sword soul. Close black lens bracket. Lin Tian was completely speechless. Nope, your system is a little abnormal today. The words are a little secret. I still miss the pretentious and cold system before. Yi Qingji. Lin Tian ignored the system. His attention was focused on the white-haired girl in front of him. The other person was lying on the ground, with a sweet expression and weak and delicate breathing. The two pink little feet would move from time to time. Lin Tian had a strange expression. Is this thing really my sword soul? Why does it feel a bit unserious? #Oh, hey. Lin Tian tried to shout, don't sleep. Well, Zushin sword spirit's expression changed. He rubbed his eyes with one hand, and sat up in a daze. She opened her eyes, her snow-white hair draped over her shoulders. After discovering that the person who summoned him came alive, his eyes suddenly brightened. A white hair on the top of his head suddenly stood up. Wow cool, can you speak? Lin Tian tried to ask. The Zushin sword spirit stood there, eyes blank. Not thinking. It's just that the CPU is about to be burned by this problem. Lin Tian was speechless about this. The system really got it right. Not only his mind, but his IQ is about the same as that of a 3 or 4-year-old child. He touched his forehead and said, do you have a name? It should have a name. He can't go out later. As soon as the battle comes, I shout something, the Zushin sword soul comes out, what kind of fusion, Zushin sword soul, etc. This is no longer the second grade. It's already starting to develop in the direction of cerebral palsy. Please. Zushin sword soul was stunned on the spot, his head was red with pain, and he couldn't think of anything. Well. Okay. Lin Tian waved his hand, since you don't have a name, let me give you one. As he spoke, he began to look at the sword spirit in front of him. I don't know something. Lin Tian was given the nickname, Little Prince, by Tian. With skin as tender as white snow and a head of white hair, he looks iceberg cold on the outside but as a typical fool on the inside. What's more, the opponent is the sword soul of the Zushin sword. Killing a mortal sword. He can kill immortals and demons, and he can also kill gods with his sword. That being the case, then you will be called Xiaobai from now on. As soon as the name came out, the color of the world changed upon hearing it. All of them are speechless. After all, he is also the sword soul of Zhu Xian. As soon as the name sounds, it is the kind of high-end atmosphere. Bragging with you. In the end, I gave him a name of Erha. Open black lens bracket. Are you kidding me? Close black lens bracket. I'm serious. Lin Tian nodded in satisfaction. Isn't that a nice name? Did you just ask a question? Close black lens bracket. Do normal people really think this name sounds nice? Wow cool. Immortal sword soul heard it. His eyes lit up immediately, and the white hair on the top of his head was so excited that it almost caught up with the propeller of the plane. System. Almost forgot. The mind and IQ of this sword soul are about 0. Not waiting for Lin Tian to speak, Xiaobai's body gradually turned into a faint white mist, and finally attached himself to his wooden sword. This is. The sword spirit of Zhu Xian has already lodged in your wooden sword. Close black lens bracket. A word to wake up the dream. In other words, the wooden sword I have now. Isn't it equivalent to the Zushin sword? Lin Tian weighed the wooden sword in his hand. Remember what this system just said, 1 + 1 greater than 2. Close black lens bracket. Lin Tian nodded. Now that I know about it. With the sword soul of Zhu Xian. At this time, Lin Tian was facing those imprisoned angels in the abyss. At this moment, I have some confidence to deal with it. Now, it's time for him to get out of his mind. After all, today is New Year's Eve. Back to the bedroom. Lin Tian took a shower first, and then put on a fleece dress. Get out of the house. As soon as he stepped out, he bumped into Zhongling, who had just finished buying breakfast. Zhongling covered her head, glanced at Lin Tian, and then said, "How is it?" An epiphany again. Lin Tian chuckled, and asked back, "I wanted to talk about it before. Why is Uncle Zhong willing to let you go out to buy breakfast all of a sudden? I wanted to ask that night. I made it myself. If he doesn't agree, I will ignore him." Zhongling grabbed Lin Tian with one hand. "Let's go, let's have breakfast together." "Let's go." Lin Tian readily agreed. But at this time, he only felt a slight tremor of the wooden sword behind him. Tangled. Xiaobai boldly appeared from inside, looking around with big, intelligent, stupid eyes. After seeing Zhongling, the whole person suddenly became curious. Zhongling, Lin Tian, Xiaobai, single quote for all backquote no. Comma, I do not know how long it has been. So, this little girl is your sword soul. Zhongling's small eyes kept looking at Xiaobai standing in front of him. Is such that, Lin Tian nodded, it's just that my brain is not working well. Xiaobai, hollow down pointing triangle. I see. She raised her head slightly and looked at the girl in front of her, is your name Xiaobai? Quote. Xiaobai nodded and looked down at Zhongling cheerfully. It seems that except for Lin Tian, this is the second person who can catch her attention. It's really Xiaobai. Zhongling was a little unbelievable. Who gave this name? Can you stand up? Ensure peaceful communication. A good-natured girl with a temperament like a fairy descended to earth, and named her Xiaobai. Doesn't this name sound good to you? Lin Tian's tone was raised a bit. Zhongling. The corners of her mouth twitched and she looked at Lin Tian speechlessly, haha. It seems that all unreasonable things will become reasonable inexplicably when placed on him. It's also amazing that Lin Tian can be given such a name. Come on, Xiaobai, sister will take you to eat something delicious. Zhongling stopped talking to Lin Tian and turned to hold Xiaobai's sleeves, let him cool down by himself. As soon as I heard there was something delicious, the stupid hair on Xiaobai's head seemed to come to life, and he followed him with numb steps. Oh, right, what's delicious? Forget it, never mind. It should be a pretty good thing. Lin Tian, Zhong family, including Xiaobai, a total of 4 people sat at the table. Uncle Zhong looked serious, holding a kohlrabi stuffed bun in his hand without taking a bite for a long time. My God, this is actually your sword soul. He looked at Xiaobai, who was devouring food in front of him. The more I look at her, the more she looks like a lost girl kidnapped from outside. 2 mouthfuls of fist-sized buns and 3 bowls of rice porridge. It doesn't even stop. Xiaobai was as happy as a flower. He held the bun with his left and right hands and started eating it. To be exact, yes. Lin Tian replied noncommittally. He is because I had some insights into my own swordsmanship a few days ago. After the breakthrough, the sword gave birth to the sword soul on its own. As he spoke, he gestured to Xiaobai, who was eating. The other party reluctantly put down the meat bun in his hand, and immediately his whole body suddenly turned into a spirit body. In front of the 3 people, the words turned into a disembodied sword soul. Finally, it was attached to Lin Tian's wooden sword. It's actually the soul of the sword. Zhang Chengwen seemed to have seen something unnatural. I thought this thing only existed in legends. All soldiers have spirits. I didn't expect them to actually exist. You kid, you are really a monster. He was heartbroken and shocked, but relieved at the same time. It's a good thing that this guy didn't go out to kidnap and traffic the fallen girl. Okay, come out and continue eating. The voice fell. Xiaobai escaped from the wooden sword like a hungry tiger pouncing on food. This moment, all she could see was the big, hot, soft, white buns on the table. Lin Tian, forget it if the system is not serious. I didn't expect that even the rewards given would be so. Forget it, can't comment. Who would have thought? The immortal Zhu sword soul makes even the immortals fearful. You actually like eating meat buns. This sword soul is quite cute. Zhang Chengwen looked at Xiaobai and said with a smile, but it's not as good as 1/10,000th of Arlinger. I agree. Lin Tian nodded and agreed. After breakfast, Uncle Zhang arranged the clothes and said that he would cook by himself today. Don't worry, Dad is fine. Zhang Chengwen wore a dark gray long down jacket, furry earbags, and finally 2 layers of thick cotton pants. Dad's injury has healed long ago, and he won't be damaged by the cold. I'm just doing what normal people of my age here do. Quote. It's better to have a good rest. Zhang Lingpo said worriedly. How about we come with you? I really thought your dad was old. Why would he need so many people to follow him just to buy groceries? Zhang Chengwen waved his hand and said, just do what I asked you to do before. It's not possible today. Today, everything you say has to be cooked by your father and me. Near night, December 31st, 11 past 9. Xiaotian's favorite pork tenderloin, and Linger's fish-flavored shredded pork. In the kitchen, Zhang Chengwen yelled triumphantly. Then he came out with a plate in one hand. 9 dishes and 1 soup, with meat and vegetables. I go. Lin Tian looked at the exaggerated dishes on the table. I haven't seen you in many years. Uncle Zhang is good at cooking. That is required. Zhang Chengwen took off his apron, went into the bedroom and changed into a beautiful formal suit. As he spoke, he found a half-filled bottle of red wine from the cabinet above. Today is as important as Linger's birthday. Polish the wine glass. Adding Xiao Bai, it is clear that there are 4 people on the table, but there are 5 people's tableware. This year it is. The same is true in previous years. Ever since he was brought home by Uncle Wang, on important days, there would be an extra set of cutlery and a glass of red wine on the table. Never fell off. Zhang Chengwen poured the red wine into the glass with a smile on his face. Sholi, after this year our Linger will be 19 years old. Old Wang is still working overtime. Daxia has suffered a lot this year, so he can't come back. It's lively on New Year's Eve. Today, let's straddle like this first. According to Uncle Zhang himself, Linger's mother encountered a strange riot when the other party was 2 years old while performing a mission. At that time there was no Lin Tian. Although Zhang Chengwen fought with his life, in the end, he still failed to save his mother's life. Okay, be happy. Zhang Chengwen gently touched Zhang Ling's head with one hand. I'm sorry, Linger. It's okay, Dad. Although Zhang Ling looked a little depressed, he still smiled and said, I'm not very good now. With you, with Lin Tian, there are so many people in the family. At this time, unable to restrain himself, Xiao Bai finally made a move on that plump elbow. Noob. Seeing this, Lin Tian scolded. The other party also shrank back consciously, but his eyes never left the elbow for half a step. Tears flowed from his mouth inadvertently. Kai Lu. Let her eat. Zhang Ling stared at Lin Tian fiercely. Why don't you let him eat it? Hee. Looking at the harmonious scenes in front of him, Zhang Chengwen was overjoyed. Lao Wang. I'm missing you during the New Year's Eve, so I have to come back for everything on New Year's Eve. Otherwise, what a pity. Let's eat. There is still half an hour before the New Year's Eve. On the table, with his big elbow in his right hand, Xiao Bai was devouring it. It was a joy to eat. Lin Tian and the others also laughed and chatted with each other. This feeling has been his favorite from beginning to end. Unfortunately it is less personal, but fortunately, this is New Year's Eve, not New Year's Eve. How long is it? Lin Tian ate the mouthful and asked Zhang Ling. Zhang Ling put down his chopsticks, looked at the time. There are still 5 minutes. Finished. She quickly picked up the chopsticks and kept putting various dishes into the small white bowl. Come and eat this, and this, my dad's dishes are delicious. Xiao Bai. Ideographic period. Lin Tian looked at Zhang Ling at this time. Why do you have a sense of déjà vu as a mother for no reason? Cough. Thinking of this, Lin Tian choked without paying attention. You also have some Linger. Count down for 1 minute. Several people looked at each other, put down their chopsticks and walked to the balcony. Tonight, the moon and stars are rare. Houses, large and small, were lit with lights. It can be seen that many people are walking to the balcony at this time. How much longer? 5, 4, New Year, new signs, don't make a wish. Lin Tian looked at Zhang Ling who was concentrating on the countdown, and asked with a smile. Of course I wish. Zhang Ling nodded seriously. 1. Whoosh. Snapped. Crash. The bright and gorgeous fireworks rose on time at 0 o'clock, and dazzling sparks bloomed in the sky. The colorful fireworks immediately lit up most of the night sky. Light up every house. It also illuminates the hearts of everyone in Daxia. looking at Zhongling illuminated by the fireworks. Lin Tian was fascinated by it for a while, and said in a daze, it's kinda pretty. Ah, Zhang Lingling blushed slightly after receiving Lin Tian's gaze. What did you just say? Ah, Lin Tian was taken aback, and quickly corrected. I said, did you make your wish? Of course I promise. Zhang Ling put her hands behind her back and said with a sweet smile, in the new year, I want everyone around me to be safe. No more. Gone. All right. It took more than 10 minutes for the fireworks to stop. The gorgeous flowers faded under the night. It's a new year. It is also a new beginning. Next morning. When it was just dawn. The cell phone placed next to Lin Tian's pillow rang suddenly. Bell. Lin Tian's eyes opened suddenly, and he answered the phone for some unknown reason. Hello. Mr. Lin, is it convenient? Huang Yunfei. Hearing it was the other party's voice, Lin Tian also quickly woke up. He sat up from the bed and replied, it's convenient. What's wrong? Here, I would like to ask you to go to the border. Huang Yunfei's tone seemed to be very conflicted. Your uncle has taken care of most of the border incidents in the past few days, so as to prevent these high-risk tasks from falling on other people. But in the past 2 days, the number of gods appearing at the border has become more and more frequent. Just those night watchmen who are above the 5th or 6th rank, are obviously a little bit powerless. Lin Tian was silent for a long time, then nodded and said, okay, I understand. Originally your uncle didn't want you to participate in these things, he wanted you to relax. It's okay, Director Huang. He tidied up briefly, let Uncle Wang take a break, and leave the rest to me. Old Wang. Too tired, there are still many night watchmen. Huang Yunfei sighed, I'll send someone to fly a helicopter to pick you up later. Forehead. Hear the word helicopter. Lin Tian's expression froze. I don't need Director Huang for that. To be honest, it's a bit too ostentatious to carry out the task like this. Very out of his style. Lin Tian scratched his head and said, I can pass by myself, the speed is faster than the helicopter. Okay, then I'll leave it to you, Mr. Lin. No big deal. In that case, I'll hang up first. Wait a moment. Just when the other party was about to hang up the phone, Lin Tian suddenly said. What happened? Send me a location on your phone. Otherwise I would easily get lost. Huang Yunfei. Hang up the phone. It didn't take long for Huang Yunfei to send the exact location to his mobile phone. After Lin Tian took a brief look, he packed up and was about to leave. Push open the door. As soon as he lowered his head, he saw Zhongling, who had been waiting silently outside the door for a long time. Are you leaving? Before Lin Tian could speak, Zhongling asked first. He stared blankly at the girl in front of him, scratched his head and said in embarrassment, why are you here? I just wanted to call you for breakfast. Zhongling shook the key and said, I heard you were talking on the phone with someone else, so I didn't go in and waited outside. Lin Tian gritted his teeth, thought for a moment and then said, Uncle Wang is almost exhausted. In order to let me come back for the New Year's Eve, he took the initiative to take on most of the tasks. Uncle Wang has just recovered, and I'm worried that the backlash in his body will relapse again. Be safe. Zhongling murmured in a low voice before he could finish, come back safely. It was the familiar 4 words again. Lin Tian knew what this meant. He also did not continue, but nodded solemnly, okay. What did you promise? Zhongling suddenly raised his head and pursed his lips, I'm talking to Xiaobai. Who told you? Although Xiaobai has a low IQ, she is much better than me. Lin Tian touched the back of his head and grinned. Skipping breakfast? Zhongling asked again. Don't eat any more. Judging from Director Huang's estimation, the situation at the border is far more serious than imagined. That's it. Zhongling replied mindlessly, it's okay if you don't want to eat. Xiaobai still wants to eat. These are her meat buns. She stuffed the bag of buns she was carrying in her right hand at Lin Tian, it's a bit much, but Xiaobai can eat it. No. Lin Tian smiled at the other party and gently touched Zhongling's head with one hand, wait until everything is over. Qianqianqian, what can we do at the end? Zhongling rolled her eyes at him and said, hurry to the border. Then let me go. Lin Tian pressed the button of the elevator, watching the floor gradually rise. The moment the elevator doors opened, Zhongling's voice seemed to be heard in his ears. The same to you, comma, come outside the community. He first took out his cell phone to confirm the general direction he was going. What happened this time was the northern border. It should be this way. Lin Tian looked towards the north. Then the wooden sword behind him seemed to be summoned by something. It flew out suddenly, seized the moment. When the wooden sword was spinning half a circle in the air, Lin Tian jumped up and landed firmly on the wooden sword. Hey, that's right, like a helicopter transfer kind of thing. Not to mention eye-catching. It makes him look very arrogant. Obviously not suitable. After all, it's better to fly with a sword. Moreover, the distance to the north is nearly twice as far as the distance from Tian to the imperial capital. At a moment like this, don't talk about hours. Even 1 minute is extremely precious and every second counts. Even if it is a military transport plane, it will take at least 7 to 8 hours. But my own plane, probably less than 3 hours. The speed was so fast that it left an afterimage in the air. Lin Tian pressed his body, and his sword intention formed an arc-shaped barrier in front of him. The sword blade cuts through the wind. It's simply not that exciting. Directly below, countless people were shocked by the scene of Lin Tian flying with his sword. I thought that alien species, gods, and supermen would be enough to subvert their understanding. Didn't you expect that even cultivators would appear now? This flying sword has nothing to do with the spectacle at night a few days ago. Don't say it, don't say it. Are you talking about the one who has been on the hot list and hasn't dropped down yet? Otherwise, the sky was full of sword shadows that day, and the immortals knelt down and worshipped. Today, they would be flying with their swords. Have the scenes in the novel already appeared in reality? At the same time, Lin Tian had already flown out of the city with his sword. Over the vast woods, a sword shadow quickly passed by. At this moment, the wooden sword under his feet suddenly trembled. Then a hazy-eyed Xiaobai emerged from the sword. She rubbed her eyes and looked like she had just woken up. The biting cold wind howled and slapped on his face. Xiaobai looked down. I found myself thousands of meters in the air. Her little face suddenly became panicked, and she turned to Lin Tian for help with tears in her eyes. But it didn't take long. Xiaobai suddenly realized. I seemed to be able to fly. Otherwise, she would have lost him long ago, and how could she still see Lin Tian? Lin Tian, he was very speechless. Are you doing this to entertain yourself? Look through Xiaobai's rich facial expressions. 3- and 4-year-old children really live with happy thoughts every day. Who knows what was going on in her mind? Wow. It was the first time for Xiaobai to set foot in the sky above 1,000 meters and see the magnificent scene in front of him. For a moment, he was flying around in the air with excitement. Don't run around. I'll leave you alone later. Lin Tian reminds me. You definitely can't lose it if you lose it. The soul binding between the two has long been determined by the system. Even though they were thousands of miles apart, Xiaobai's desire to come back was just a matter of a moment's notice. Equivalent to the return key in a certain game. As soon as the distance was close, he flew back. The body dissipates directly from a distance, and returns to the wooden sword body in a second. Very convenient, after a while, probably tired from flying. Xiaobai's energy level was much weaker than before. She floated to Lin Tian's side with a dull expression, her big watery eyes staring straight at the things stuffed in Lin Tian's pocket. You're not hungry, are you? Lin Tian glanced at her. Regardless of how the other party discovered it. What if it smells bad? It's also possible that the opponent is still aware of what's happening around him when he's attached to the sword. Lin Tian scratched his head in embarrassment. If this is the case, he has a bold idea. Never mind. From now on just throw the sword out the door. Isn't this the end? As expected of me. Thinking of this, Lin Tian took out 2 meat buns from his pocket and handed them to Xiaobai. As soon as I saw the meat buns, Xiaobai's eyes gleamed, and he took the bun accurately with both hands. 1 bite, 2 bites. Xiaobai, for all, enjoy. Lin Tian, the style of painting is getting more and more wrong. He was afraid that he might have encountered a fake. You are the Zushan sword soul. She has the appearance of an iceberg goddess, and is over 1.7 meters tall, half a head taller than Zhongling. Who dares to believe it? This kind of sword soul who looks so good at first sight actually likes to eat meat buns. A few more hours passed. Lin Tian's eyelids twitched and he hit him. Once again, focus on the scenery below. Ahead. It is already a vast and boundless ocean. Arrive. The northern border of Daxia. The rough water beat fiercely on the reef on the shore. The huge and majestic steel fortress stands on the border like an unstoppable lion. Is this the pass built by Daxia to defend against foreign creatures? Seeing this for the first time, even Lin Tian couldn't help but let out an exclamation. The entire fortress is made of forbidden objects and some mixed metals, like the Great Wall, stationed here. Even if the gods want to destroy this pass fortress, it is extremely difficult. And the whole summer, a fortress of this size. There are 4 places. They are the Great Wall of Great Shah. If the pass is not broken, the Great Shah will not perish. To this end, the Night Watch Division did not hesitate to send a lot of manpower and material resources. The purpose is to guard these 4 fortresses in Daxia. After Xiaobai finished eating the meat buns, he returned to the wooden sword satisfied. Move your feet slightly. Lin Tian jumped down from the sword and landed firmly in front of the northern pass. The moment of landing, Lin Tian only felt that dozens of gazes were cast in this direction. Next moment, more than a dozen night watchmen walked out of the pass. The pass is very important, and idlers are not allowed to enter. The night watchman at the head said loudly to Lin Tian. These are the night watchmen who guard the pass keep. They boarded the fort with the determination to see death as home. I would rather die than shut down. Lin Tian looked at the weather-stained night watchman in front of him, and said respectfully, Tian City Red Moon Squad Night Watchman, Lin Tian. Lin Tian, the head night watchman who was blind in one eye, thought for a while when he heard the name, is it Mr. Lin who can kill gods? The voice fell. Several figures sprang out from behind him. Fire fists mixed with crushed ice attacked Lin Tian. Lin Tian looked at the sudden attack. His expression didn't change at all, as motionless as a mountain. A wisp of light sword intent emerged from his sword. Only in the blink of an eye. The attack of the two was disintegrated, and the whole person couldn't help but froze in place, with deep shock in their eyes. This, so strong. It's so easy to block the joint attack of the two of them. Lin Tian looked at the 2 night watchmen in front of him. They should be brothers. They look the same except for their clothes and mannerisms. As for age, in his early 26s and 70s. I'm sorry. The unshaven night watchman with blindfold stepped forward quickly. It really is Mr. Lin, the hero who turned out to be a boy. He smiled generously. Introduce yourself. I am the commander of the northern fortress, Ma Chengyu. These 2 are my assistants, 5th level awakeners. Ma Chengyu said enthusiastically. The one who uses ice is called Chaoyang, and the one who uses fire is called Jiaoshu. Although these 2 are young, their qualifications are considered to be the older group. They were stationed at the background pass at the age of 17, and now it has been 11 years. Have you been stationed in the fortress since you were 17? Lin Tian was slightly surprised when he heard this sentence. Mr. Lin, please forgive me. Our group of people are rough guys. We are afraid that someone will pretend to be imposters, so we use such a simple method. Ma Chengyu grinned grinningly. We haven't left the pass for more than 10 years. We only hear his name, but don't see him. Please bear with us. Don't dare. The seniors are also heroes who have dedicated themselves to Great Shah. Lin Tian said humbly. The dangerous pass is almost the place with the highest sacrifice rate among the night watchmen. The night watchmen stationed here have changed from generation to generation. But none of the night watchmen backed down after arriving here. Even if he is disabled, he still doesn't want to leave the customs. Because they know it in their hearts. Behind them. It's the whole of Daxia. Looking at these past night watchmen wrapped in thick cotton clothes, facing the extremely cold weather all year round, the resurrected gods outside the country still insist on not retreating. Lin Tian was in awe. Stop standing here, Ma Chengyu greeted. Director Huang has a very important task for you. Let's talk after we go in. After saying this, he stopped Lin Tian and walked toward the inside of the pass. Northern Pass. Compared with the severe cold weather outside the customs all year round, it's much warmer inside. Thousands of night watchmen gathered inside, not daring to relax for a moment. Mr. Lin was really outstanding at that time. Ma Chengyu shouted. Although we are young, after more than 10 years of hard work in the past, we are truly 5th level awakened people. It was actually blocked so easily. I am over-flattered. Lin Tian touched the back of his head. Always say that. I feel a little embarrassed all the time. Don't be modest. You are worthy of having the strength to kill gods. We 2 brothers are willing to be defeated. Chaoyang clasped his hands in his fists. Lin Tian. Ma Chengyu kept mumbling in his mouth, patted his head and said troubledly, "Hey, my head has almost lost contact with the outside world. Mr. Lin, you are Chairman Wang's nephew, I guess." "Wang Yangshi is my uncle," Lin Tian said truthfully. "What I said, that's right." Ma Chengyu patted Lin Tian hard on the back. "Your uncle and I have met several times. They are all from that generation." "Are they all from that generation?" Lin Tian seemed to have grasped a certain point. "Senior Ma, don't you think?" Cough 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 cough. Ma Chengyu suddenly coughed loudly. "Is it possible that my throat is affected by wind? It's so uncomfortable." The Chow family brothers followed behind and slowly typed 2 question marks. "Wind in your throat? Are you kidding me? I saw you bathing in the glacier shirtless a few days ago. Brother Ma, weren't you still in the river a few days ago?" Cough 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 cough. Ma Chengyu interrupted him again with a cough. "What the hell are you 2 talking about? Who bathes in the glacier?" He pointed at himself and denied. "Can I do something so disgraceful? I'm a gentleman." Lin Tian. Chow family brothers. Yes, yes. Have you 2 been skinned by me for too long?" Ma Chengyu's face was covered with black lines. "Why don't I just stay cool?" After experiencing a small episode, Lin Tian followed Ma Chengyu to the 2nd floor of the pass. It's a little brighter here than on the 1st floor. There is a huge sea map on the long table. Various marks were made on it with pens of different colors. "Commander Ma, Director Huang asked me to come this time. What's the matter?" Ma Chengyu walked to the table. After spreading out a map, there was a bright red mark on it. In the past few days, the new god and his gang of cerebral palsy boys have been wandering around the sidelines. Just yesterday, while chasing tarot believers, a team of our night watchmen accidentally entered a deep sea outside the country. Ma Chengyu said, pointing to the bright red mark. "Our team lost contact after entering the deep sea. And there, it was the last signal source we captured before they disappeared. Here it is." Lin Tian looked at the position marked by the red circle and asked. "There used to be a city that fell here and was finally submerged by seawater. Now, it's just a nameless place." Ma Chengyu explained. After all, he turned on the screen on the desktop. "Here is the picture captured by the last ray of signal source before disappearing." Lin Tian looked down at the video that only lasted less than 3 seconds. In the screen, disorderly gray snowflakes flickered. In a burst of fierce fighting and the roar of some unknown creatures. Video ends. Lin Tian stared at the video for a long time, frowning slightly, as if he had discovered something. "Commander Ma, can this video be slowed down?" "Slow?" Ma Chengyu was stunned for a moment, and then replied, "Yes, how much does Mr. Lin want to slow down?" 1,000 times. Lin Tian opened his mouth lightly, staring intently at the short 3-second video. Slow down 1,000 times. The sound in the picture is infinitely elongated, which seems a bit weird. At this time, that is when the video is nearing the end. A burst of bright red images suddenly jumped out of the screen that was originally covered with snowflakes. "This is it." Lin Tian signaled the other party to call back the video. "Slow down again, as slow as you can." "Ooh, okay." Ma Chengyu was also extremely surprised by this. Nanny's oversight. Forgot such an important detail. He cursed to himself inwardly. Ma Chengyu, are you stupid in the past? Why is your brain not working properly?" Back to reality. In dozens of replays. Finally, at the time of slowing down by 7,000 times, that weird frame was completely preserved. Finally saved. Ma Chengyu was overjoyed, and couldn't wait to play this frame. The red light immediately illuminated most of the room. There was red light in Lin Tian's eyes. In this frame, the only remaining ground is covered with scarlet thorns. This is, what place? The earth seemed to be soaked in blood, and there were disgusting monsters covered with tumors everywhere. The blood-red thorns are like a virus, constantly assimilating everything around them. See this picture. Lin Tian couldn't help but associate these with the abyss. Could it be that a plane similar to the abyss has descended on Blue Star? This place is more dangerous than imagined. Ma Chengyu frowned tightly, and then simultaneously transmitted the obtained images and information to the Night Watch Division. Mr. Ma, does Director Huang mean to explore these places? That counts. Ma Chengyu scratched his head, and said carelessly, that team of night watchmen is generally above the 4th level, but they have lost contact now. Silly doesn't want to give up on them, but the night watchmen above the 6th rank who are capable of going to sea now have important things to do. He said, and suddenly sighed. Your uncle, running back and forth across the 4 borders these days, my body must have been overloaded. After hearing the news, I still wanted to go to sea, but was held down by Director Huang. When Ma Chengyu said this, there was a trace of admiration in his eyes. This guy was very crazy before, but I didn't expect to work harder than anyone else after becoming the speaker, which made me, the border army commander, feel a little embarrassed. He smiled bitterly, as if he had noticed that he had deviated from the topic, and quickly snapped back. So now in Daxia, the only one who has the ability to go to sea and return safely is Mr. Lin. Give it to me. Lin Tian vowed. This position may have something to do with the abyss. If we don't find out as soon as possible, it may be detrimental to the future of Great Sha. It's really a hero out of a boy. Every wave is bigger than one wave. Ma Chengyu patted Lin Tian on the shoulder, and said with a smile, you have such courage at the age of 18, it's much better than your uncle who didn't agree with each other, anyway. After he finished speaking, he took out a forbidden object similar to a metal map from a box. This can show your own position and direction, and the place you need to go has been marked by a red circle. Okay, all right. Lin Tian took the forbidden item. Almost all the sea area outside the north was rubbed on this forbidden object. Meticulous can't wait to mark every 100 meters. I'm afraid that people who use this will get lost. Your uncle improved it overnight. Ma Chengyu added. After your uncle knew that he couldn't go to sea, he already guessed that Director Huang would come to you. So that night, I modified the map that recorded the coordinates. Lin Tian, it's really Uncle Wang's style. He put the map of forbidden objects into his arms. Director Ma, please contact Sealy and ask them to talk to Uncle Wang and have a good rest. No problem, it's all trivial. Ma Chengyu patted his chest, promising to come down. I will try my best to come back within 3 days. If it exceeds these few days, please hold my uncle down. He cannot leave Daxia. Lin Tian seemed to have thought of some serious consequences. Just tell him, I will be fine, don't worry. It's okay, Mr. Lin, we all understand. Ma Chengyu nodded. Just ask the night watchman from Wang Yangshi's generation. Who doesn't know what kind of temper he is? That's fine. Lin Tian came to the edge of the pass, and the wooden sword flew out behind him. Behind, dozens of night watchmen headed by Ma Chengyu made a standard military posture. Watching Yu Jian disappearing into the vast ocean. Lin Tian. Congratulations, overseas waters. Looking around, there is a blue scene. Lin Tian Yu Jian vacated. Some alien species that seemed to escape from the cracks could be vaguely seen in the sea. Huge in stature and extremely fast. As soon as it surfaced, it quickly disappeared. Is this the unnamed sea outside? Lin Tian looked down at the map in his hand that was in charge of positioning. After the abyss came, on and off the Blue Star, countless cities were destroyed by alien species. Under this endless sea, buried endless bones and ruins of the sunken city. The distance from the pass to the marked spot is not very far. Fly over at the speed of Lin Tian. It will take about an hour or so to arrive. On the sea, the sparse reefs are exposed on the sea surface and are constantly washed by seawater. Follow the display on the map. Lin Tian is already very close to the marked area. Unknowingly, when Lin Tian looked forward again, he looked serious. It's getting foggy. The misty white mist seems to cover this area with a veil of mystery. Lin Tian's nerves tensed up subconsciously. Because it is ahead. He saw scarlet in the picture. Together with the land floating on the sea. And the ruins of a deserted city. Lin Tian Yu Jian vacated. Directly below, the scarlet vines dissatisfied with thorns have spread the entire continent to the whole. The crimson floats are like devil's eyeballs, being swept into the sea together with layers of waves. The crimson. Much of the city has long since sunk into this ocean. If it weren't for the hellish atmosphere created by these weird scarlets. Lin Tian even had some kind of strange hallucination. This ocean, is there really nothing wrong with it? Not to mention not being polluted by scarlet, why does it feel like there is something staring at him at the bottom of the sea? Not only that, it seems that after staying on the sea for a long time, it seems that I can vaguely hear some kind of empty and vast requiem in my ears. Before you know it, you will get lost in this unknown sea. Lin Tian knew it himself. The first priority now is to survey the Crimson Continent and the surrounding cities that are not submerged in the ocean and are also polluted. Maybe with better luck, he's also able to track down the border team that went missing around here. Think of this. Lin Tian leapt forward. The moment he landed, dozens of sharp sword chi burst out from his body, sweeping away all the scarlet vines in front of him. Step on these red crumbs. Lin Tian stomped hard. He was sure. Forehead. Never mind. Anyone who sees these scenes will actually think so. These things are not things on Hemiao, not Daxia, or Blue Star. What plant? The speed of pollution assimilation almost caught up with biochemical viruses. In front of this thing. Biochemical viruses have to be slapped twice when they pass by. If you don't hide fast enough, you may turn red yourself. Watching the grooves stepped on the ground being spread by those scarlet at a speed visible to the naked eye. Lin Tian took a deep breath. It's terrible. Hard to imagine. If this thing had appeared in Great Sha territory from the very beginning, how serious the consequences would be. There was an abyss of disaster before, and it was already painful enough. It's fine now. Another scarlet region was used. Not only that, but both of them were assimilated by his meow infection. One infects people, one assimilates the environment. Hey, there are really two of you. Arranged to come. Lin Tian said, Come to the ground. Looking around, a barren red. There seemed to be the panting sound of some kind of creature coming from a distance. Trees, lakes, and even the pitted streams on the ground were assimilated into a single color by scarlet. Lin Tian did not choose to explore the direction of the plain. Instead, he walked towards the ruins of the city near the nameless sea in the opposite direction. Intuition told him, if that team was hunted down halfway or was avoiding some kind of threat. At worst, it was forcibly blackmailed by Taro or some overseas organizations. Whatever it is, the probability of city ruins is greater than that of the vast red plain behind. Think more. Lin Tian stepped on the wooden sword again and flew towards the city. Along the way, in addition to the red in the eyes, there are only those nameless oceans with faint blue light. A sense of embarrassment emerged spontaneously. The moment the wooden sword flew into the ruins of the city. Lin Tian then spread his sword intent into a large net, constantly exploring in all directions with himself as the center. One is to eliminate unnecessary dangers and speed up the travel. Second, the system to find the missing team will be bigger. This moment, the sword net has covered a radius of 200 meters. Even if there is only a slight disturbance, or even a mosquito flies by. Of course there are no mosquitoes here. He can also detect it in the first place and confirm its location. Lin Tian Yujian wanders in this sunken city. Remove those crimson vines that have completely covered the surface. He can totally feel it. It used to be a bustling neon city. Skyscrapers, including cumbersome display screens on the street. Everything is explained. The sunken city in front of me may have been a prosperous city like the imperial capital in the past. Unfortunately, today only this small portion is left that has not sunk into the ocean. As for the remaining humans, I don't know where to go. At least Lin Tian has not found any signs of living people. Well, Lin Tian looked at the lonely scene in front of him. The arrival of the abyss destroyed the order that Blue Star had taken root for thousands of years. Nowadays, except for Daxia, maybe the cities that survived the catastrophe were almost bewitched by those new gods. Etc. With room to sigh, Lin Tian sensed something was wrong. He rose to a high altitude, spreading the range of the sword net to the maximum for a while. Yes, why is the abyss, the initiator of everything here, gone? Ever since he came here, he hadn't found an open crack in the abyss. Not even a single swimming alien. It seems that only the scarlet environment is left in the entire continent. Could it be? Lin Tian touched his chin. Could it be that in this kind of alien plane environment, a region can only exist in one kind? And the rule of retention is not first come, first served. Otherwise, the abyss would have covered the entire blue star decades ago. How could there still be space left for these plane environments to take advantage of loopholes? Suddenly, Lin Tian seemed to sense something. The whole figure flew towards a direction without thinking. Just now, his sword net captured the breath of a living person. Although only for a moment. But this is also enough for Lin Tian to confirm the direction. It's not alien, it's human. Lin Tian muttered. The aura given by human and non-human creatures when caught by the sword net is different. At least the one just now was human. Come to the place where you just caught that breath. Lin Tian retracted his sword and fell to the ground. Unfortunately, there was no one around. The other party seemed to have sensed his presence, so he had already moved ahead of time. Lin Tian stood on the spot. Facing this situation, he only slightly raised his eyebrows. The tense breath also dissipated. He walked slowly to a collapsed scarlet ruin. Use the sword to clear the obstacles in front of you. Suddenly, in an instant, two figures galloped in front of him, and charged forward with all their strength. Lin Tian frowned. The wooden sword flew out of his hand, and he raised it lightly with both hands. Those two figures were held in his hands like chickens. The attack breaks without moving. Hey, calm down, we are our own people. Lin Tian controlled the sword intent to lift the two of them in the air, scratched his head and said in trouble, you should be the team that disappeared when chasing Taro at the northern pass. He looked at the faces and clothes of the two figures in front of him. He was in his early 20s, wearing cold-proof clothing exclusive to the northern pass, and a night watchman medal on his chest. The two looked a little panicked, and their bodies were covered with strange scratches and unknown corrosion marks. The whole looks miserable. It should be not long after escaping from the gate of hell, and the mood has not had time to recover. The two were suspended in the air, and only then did a trace of clarity return to their desperate eyes. One of them looked at the boy in front of him. Opening his parched throat, he said slowly, using a sword, You are Lin Tian. After the two of them saw this man who had become a legend in the night watchman system, his expression of fear and despair suddenly became much brighter. Lin Tian's name has long been spread throughout the night patrol department. Sword users, even the former swordsman senior who may not have as profound a knowledge of the sword as the young man in front of him. Yes, there is hope. One of the night watchmen laughed happily, then pointed to the depths of the ruins with one hand. There is still a team member there. If possible, can you take her away first? She's dying. The night watchman looked anxious. Don't worry, Commander Ma is still waiting for you, and all the night watchmen at the pass are waiting for you to return safely. Lin Tian put the two of them down and immediately walked towards the ruins that the two of them had deliberately covered up with rubble. A girl also dressed in night watchman clothes was lying on the ground covered in blood. A large piece of flesh and blood was torn off by something unknown at the waist. Although emergency treatment was done to stop the bleeding, he was completely unconscious. If you don't receive formal treatment, I'm afraid it won't take long. Let's go first. Lin Tian raised his finger, and the wooden sword slowly flew out and held up the opponent. While walking, he said, what on earth caused this wound? 10 minutes later, the two devoured the buns that Zhongling brought to Lin Tian before leaving. They are not alien species, they are blood-red creatures. They are very strong, each one is very strong. The night watchman named Feng said while eating, they are creatures brought from these scarlet areas. A few days ago, we chased Taro all the way, and finally discovered this scarlet continent on this unknown sea. The man finished the whole bun in 2 or 3 mouthfuls, then picked up the water Lin Tian brought and carefully fed it to the unconscious girl. Little did he know that he had fallen into the other party's trap. These creatures from the scarlet area came because of the Taro. It's like they have colluded to only attack us. Feng looked at the girl in front of him worriedly, and said softly, it's okay, there are still a lot of people waiting for us in the pass, your family is waiting for you, it will be fine, Yuyu. The girl's name is Luo Yuyu, she is also one of the night watchmen at the northern pass, a 5th-level auxiliary awakener. Lin Tian looked at the appearance of the 3 people in front of him, shook his head helplessly, and continued to ask, "You just said that these creatures only attack you, will not attack those, Taro, people." "Yes." Chi Feng nodded, "they are like allies. Those creatures will automatically ignore them when passing by them." "Is it possible that these creatures are intelligent?" Lin Tian frowned. "If, like those abyssal alien species, they were generally not very intelligent and would just kill them all, that would be fine. After all, dealing with such alien species only requires some effort. If you can't kill him with one sword, you'll have to use more swords. But if it is really like what Chi Feng said, then it cannot be solved by using pure force. There will be more to consider every time you do it. The threats Daxia will face in the future will also be more difficult." Chi Feng covered the wound on his chest, his face livid. "No, it doesn't feel like it." He thought for a moment and said in a serious tone, "I don't have much education and I don't know how to speak. If those creatures in the Scarlet area were really intelligent, our team wouldn't be left with just the 3 of us, but all of them would be dead." Lin Tian, however, although it sounds weird, but if you look closely, it seems to be true. For the sake of safety, the past night watch team is composed of 7 people. What's more, the strength of everyone in this team is above level 4. To be able to push this kind of team that can encircle and suppress S-level alien species into such a desperate situation, I am afraid that not all of those biological strengths are not lower than A-level alien species. Really smart. Those creatures seem to be distinguished by smell. Chi Feng added, after this group of creatures appeared, the group of Taro people left. After that, the team continued to suffer casualties, and the seniors who were older than us tried to delay us. Speaking of this, he gritted his teeth, with a look of self-blame and sadness on his expression. At this time, another night watchman named Xu Wenshan said, "There are 7 people in the team, and now there are only 3 of us left." When Yu was desperately saving other team members, she was severely injured by those monsters and became what she is now. The number of that group of creatures is still increasing. It seems that as long as they are in the Scarlet area, those Scarlet monsters will continue to be born. As the man said, he possessed himself on the ground and picked up a large handful of wet red soil. The group of monsters should have no IQ. After we used the soil to cover up the smell on our bodies, those creatures were lost. They are now missing, and they should be lurking and waiting for new scents to appear. Forehead. After hearing the 4 words of a new smell, Lin Tian's expression suddenly became awkward. Meow. Now there are 4 people on the ground. All 3 mask the smell. He didn't say who the remaining one was. For a long time, he looked at the collapsed buildings not far away, and said lightly, "No, it's already here." The voice just fell. I saw hundreds of blood-red creatures crawling out of those buildings. Spiders with blood-red fluff, one-eyed monsters with huge hideous faces, and planktonic creatures that can float in the air. Cabbage will draw for you tomorrow. You can even see bleeding jellyfish and a snail covered in blood and thorns that can roll quickly. Just these creatures. Seeing this, Chi Feng and Xu Wenshan quickly entered a fighting state. Despite dragging a tired and seriously injured body. But they still didn't choose to stand behind Lin Tian, but stood on both sides to meet the enemy together. Their eyes are firm, and although they still have fear in their hearts, they are aware of their current identities. As night watchmen, as a warrior guarding the pass. At this moment, the 2 resolutely prepared to sacrifice their lives. "Mr. Lin, take Yu and go first, there are too many monsters here, I'm afraid." Chi Feng wiped the sweat from his forehead, and stretched out several sharp thorns with his hands. "Our family is long gone, but Yu is different. She still has family members she misses, Mr. Lin. Please take her home." The other side, facing the scarlet creatures coming, Xu Wenshan plunged his hands into the ground, and then set up walls of earth. "We are not strong, but it's okay to delay for a while. Stand back first." Seeing this, Lin Tian comforted the 2 of them. "Take care of your team members. Here, give it to me." This, Chi Feng stepped back subconsciously, with a hint of surprise in his astonished eyes. They have seen the strength of these bloody creatures. It's safe to say, even the red jellyfish, which seems to be the weakest among these creatures, can kill a 4th-level awakened person instantly with its own toxin. Its degree of danger is no less than that of the A-level alien species in the abyss. Nearly 1,000 bloody creatures that can be compared to A-level aliens. Can a person really handle it? Xu Wenshan clenched his hands into fists. At this time, he and Qifeng had the same idea. Not questioning, but worry. If they lose a peerless evildoer who can kill God at the age of 18 because of them. It's a pity. Even if they die because of this, they will never have the intention of half-dissolving. Some are full of self-blame and regret. Take your teammates and stand back. Lin Tian casually glanced at the menacing bloody creatures like a tide. He flicked lightly with his right hand. The wooden sword held Yu Yu, who was seriously injured and unconscious, and slowly floated behind her. Mr. Lin, your sword. Qifeng looked worried. Now the wooden sword is occupied by the unconscious Yu Yu. Face thousands of bloody creatures. Just rely on empty hands. The hope of coping seems much slimmer in their eyes. After all, they have never seen Lin Tian's strength with their own eyes. I never knew how terrifying the other party had grown to in the past few months. The only thing that is clear. It was the calm and breezy look on the young man's face. Lin Tian smiled lightly. To deal with these deformities, he swept his sword eyebrows and flipped with one hand. 2 strands of sword intent extended out of thin air. You can do it without a sword. The words fell. Lin Tian tiptoed to the ground, and his figure turned into a sword shadow and rushed straight into the bloody beast tide. Face a dense rain of bloody creatures. A look of disgust flashed in his eyes. With a thought, the Suiyu sword intent and the Xiaoyao sword intent turned into 2 invisible films and attached to his hands. Roar! A monster with a huge face, one-eyed and ugly rushed towards Lin Tian frantically. That bloody mouth seemed to be able to swallow Lin Tian whole in one gulp. A foul-smelling mucus spilled from between the teeth. Dude, do you have a toothache? Lin Tian flicked lightly, and the hands possessed by the sword intent suddenly grabbed the monster's face. Only light touch. The 2 sword intents crushed the monster's head like cutting tofu. Boom! With a mountain-like strength, Lin Tian pressed down hard. Even with thudapore, bloody creature. Dozens of cracks broke into the flat red ground in an instant. For a while, hundreds of bloody creatures had no time to react, struggling to fall into the deep crack. Lin Tian is not idle here either. This physical attack targets the ground and not the air. Some flying creatures, for example, those jellyfish or plankton with tentacles, were not affected much. He broke his neck. Then put your fingers together to transform the sword. Gently tap out. The 2 sword intents immediately acted like a lawn mower. Everywhere, bloody creatures, no piece of armor left. The sound of howling and tearing of flesh and blood kept ringing in the ears of Qifeng and others. They almost wiped out their team before, even sacrificing 4 past seniors for it. But now, that's the kind of creature it is. Now he is just like a piece of cake, being ravaged by the young man in front of him with his bare hands. Maybe this is why Commander Ma dared to let the other party come alone. Xu Wenshan looked at the almost one-sided scene in front of him and spoke in a daze. How's Yu Yu doing? He took a deep breath and immediately looked in the direction of the wooden sword. Although Qifeng was deeply shocked, he still focused on Yu Yu. It's okay. There is no life-threatening danger in a short period of time, but the wound is still getting worse. We will go home. It doesn't matter if we die here, but Yu Yu still has family. They are all waiting for her to return safely. Qifeng looked gratefully at Lin Tian, who had killed most of the bloody creatures, thanks to Mr. Lin. The leader of the swordsmanship, who has no one before or since, is not for nothing. Xu Wenshan's expression gradually changed from initial shock to admiration. Kill the god at the age of 18. It only took more than half a year to gain the recognition and trust of countless people in the department. Lin Tian, he really saw it today. A new era is coming. Although they are still young, they are all around 26 years old. But there is already a vague feeling that it is about to be left behind by the times. I have a hunch that a new stage of Daxia is about to come. Xu Wenshan's tone was very firm, and the one who will lead the way in the future. Definitely Lin Tian. I agree. Qifeng nodded. There is no doubt about this. Both age and strength have surpassed the Night Watch division at this stage. It's worth calling the other person this. He is the only one worthy of the role of guide. The other side. Lin Tian lowered his head and glanced at his phone. The time has just reached the 10th minute. Not 1 point more, not 1 point less. Just right. Lin Tian effortlessly grabbed the bloody jellyfish floating in the air with one hand. Before the poison could even touch the skin, it was completely wiped out by the sword. Solve. Lin Tian calmly patted down the blood clots and stains on his body. It's done. Go home. Talking, he faced Qifeng and his two men who were paddling in the water and eating melons in the distance. These two were completely conquered by Lin Tian's super-century strength at this moment. God comes down to earth and strikes 1,000. What kind of creatures from a new plane and terrain? In other people's eyes. But bean sprouts can be crushed to death with just a lift of your hands. Lin Tian activated the wooden sword. When you return, you are responsible for fully reporting this terrain that is suspected to have the same origin as the abyss to Si Li. He said as he walked. As for the degree of danger, Lin Tian touched his chin and thought for a moment, then said, after the feeling that thousands of bloody creatures gave me just now. Those who are awakened below the 5th level cannot easily enter, and a team of more than 7 people is required to enter this area. Okay. Qifeng nodded repeatedly. Does age represent experience and strength? Pull. The fake boss has white hair, pretends to be deep in his speech, and can make people think deeply. The real boss, a red sweatshirt and casual pants, who is not frightened when he sees it, but does it whenever he disagrees, and the gods are frightened and trembled. He has the most passionate face and pretends to be the hardest bitch. This is not cheating, can it be said? Qifeng completely turned into a little fanboy at this time. Please, stand with big brother Lin Tian. The sense of security is overwhelming. Okay. Lin Tian, who was walking at the front, suddenly trembled. Let's see Leo be the main force. This bloody area has not yet been explored, but its degree of danger is unknown. Equal to the 6th floor of the abyss. The Crimson, the other side. Several men and women in different costumes fell into a bush of thorns. How many corpses are there? One of the old men in sackcloth stared into the distance. Follow the instructions of the God Lord. The appearance of Scarlet Land means that the eternal night era is coming. God has given us a second life. Speaking of which, he opened his hands to face the sky. The will of the Lord must be fulfilled. The voice fell. Several male and female figures behind him closed their eyes together, folded their hands and prayed silently. It is different from Daxia's god religion. The former believed in the ancient gods as saviors. The latter is more like a brainwashing pyramid scheme. The gods are masters, and they are puppet servants who follow orders. No thinking, no asking. Just do what God tells you to do. Let flesh and blood be born on this continent. ... After half an hour, Lin Tian and others have come to the edge of the city. Those scarlet cell plants are still crazily eating everything around them. A few bloody creatures can be vaguely seen wandering nearby. Don't know their names. Specifically, we have to wait for professionals to determine their names after returning to the Night Watch division. For example, this big-faced and long-faced thief is called One-Eyed Karami. The one that can fly is not as big as his fist, it's called Ball Karami. Furthermore, looking at the blood-red disgusting snail, it's called Rolling Karami. Certainly, these are just Lin Tian's own imaginations. Relatively casual, but absolutely apartment, Mr. Lin. At this time, Qifeng, who had been in charge of taking care of Yu, suddenly said, there is something wrong. Qifeng's voice was heard. Lin Tian stopped in his tracks and looked around. What's wrong? The body is gone. What? The corpses of the senior night watchmen in those passes are all gone. Qifeng said in a deep voice. I remember very clearly that in order to protect us, these 4 seniors were overwhelmed by the group of bloody creatures. Hear the sound and look. After Xu Wenshan saw the remaining bloodstains on the ground, he was also shocked and said, it is indeed gone. Hear this. Lin Tian frowned slightly. They have also seen the ferocity of the group of creatures. Maybe it was eaten. Never mind. It's a bit too offensive to say that to those predecessors who have passed away. Seems to have guessed Lin Tian's concerns. Qifeng suppressed the grief in his heart, and stepped forward to check it carefully. For a long time, he stood up from the ground and shook his head at Lin Tian. No, the body should have been taken away. There is no other reason. It was a bit too clean. There was not even a trace of mess on the blood on the ground. Take it away. Hear these 3 words. Lin Tian only felt a headache. He remembered the deep pit hidden in the ground that was discovered in Tian City before. Accelerate the ancient gods to break through the shackles. The price is the sacrifice of the lives of hundreds of innocent citizens. Could it be that this time the corpse was also meant to revive the ancient god? So far, his knowledge of the Crimson is next to nothing. But the body was taken away. Based on this alone, Lin Tian can conclude. In all likelihood, it was the work of those Tarot people. Is it over? The Abyss and this ghost place collude to come and take turns. God's cult and Tarot also played the same routine, right? You really have to make some moves out to be bound. Lin Tian rubbed his temples, subconsciously speeding up a lot. Let's get out of here first. The primary purpose is to send you back safely. After Lin Tian finished speaking, his eyes swept over a cracked mountain in the distance intentionally or unintentionally. There has been completely assimilated by Scarlet. The cracked gap is like a devil opening its bloody mouth, and the flesh-like rock is wriggling. It looks disgusting. It's the beach. Lin Tian pointed to the wooden sword, then looked at Qifeng and the two. You should be able to fly all the way back across the sea. For an awakened person of the 4th and 5th ranks, the unique skill of floating on water has not been difficult for a long time. It has even been able to do short flights. Otherwise, they would not have been able to chase Tarot so far away. Yes, but Mr. Lin. Xu Wenxian seemed to see Lin Tian's intentions. Aren't you going back with us? That counts. Lin Tian touched the back of his head, and then injected 2 pure sword intents into the wooden sword. These 2 sword intents are enough to escort you safely to the pass. This point, he still has absolute confidence in himself. Release the 2 sword intents. Its power is not inferior to the time swordsmanship and sword 6,000 miles he personally used. What's more, he is not himself when he first faced Swotoxin more than half a year ago. These 2 swords, killing God is hard to say. But it's absolutely fine to hit hard. Mr. Lin, is it too risky for you to stay here alone? The Crimson is still undiscovered. The situation is even more like the Abyss decades ago, without any knowledge. The unknown is often the most dangerous. Even if it is as strong as Lin Tian. It is also inevitable that you will miss it. So Qifeng's meaning is very clear. It's safer to go back and report the situation first, and make a long-term plan. But this is obviously not Lin Tian's style. He is stable when there are people around. He can chop and fly when no one is around. Only by ensuring the safety of those around him can Lin Tian completely let go of his hands and feet without any worries. Go back first, I have some things to deal with. Lin Tian smacked his lips. I leave the wooden swords to you. After all, it's fun to punch to the flesh. As he spoke, he clenched his fists tightly, and his bones made a faint sound. Qifeng's eyelids twitched. Mr. Lin. You don't want to kill all the scarlet creatures here, do you? No. When Lin Tian heard this, he waved his hands again and again. As long as the Crimson is still there, the creatures here will continue to give birth to those things. It can't be killed. That's good. Seeing this, Qifeng also heaved a sigh of relief. The area of this scarlet polluted continent is nearly 1/10 of Daxia's territory. Such a huge area. Really want to kill all the bloody creatures on it. That's just crazy. I'm going to help you finish what you haven't finished. Lin Tian went on to say. Qifeng. Xu Wenji. Unfinished business. Tarot. The two said at the same time. Mr. Lin, do you want to continue chasing Tarot? Half right. Lin Tian snapped his fingers, showing a smile that villains only have. It's venting anger. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. Chapter 131. The intuition that person gave me is dangerous. Far away, the hooded old man in sackcloth said in a deep tone, I can feel the difference between the other party and those people. Wait and see from a distance, don't act rashly, otherwise it will be very troublesome. The old man said again. His eyes are vicissitudes, but they seem to have a divine light. The old wooden scepter was lightly tapped on the ground, and the figures of the crowd perfectly merged with the surrounding terrain in an instant. The aura that had been deliberately hidden had become even more difficult to detect. Then what should we do with the mission entrusted to us by the God Lord? The bloody land before the eternal night era has not yet come needs the nourishment of flesh and blood. Behind the old man, a man in a clown costume had a troubled expression on his face. To do so is to defy the will of God. In their eyes, disloyalty and betrayal are punishable by God. The words of the fool naturally have the reason of the fool. Another woman who was traveling with her, dressed like a priest, replied indifferently, "After that boy comes, he will be able to lead the remaining 3 people out of trouble safely from the tide of thousands of bloody creatures." The strength is naturally not to be underestimated. The priestess glanced at the man in the clown costume, and continued, "Follow the fool's arrangement. After all, the other party is the most trusted subordinate of the God Lord." Tsk. After struggling for a while, the clown man finally compromised, "All right. But those people probably won't come over." "Won't." The fool's tone was light, "We are only watching from a distance. This is a wise choice, and we have already hidden in the depths of the bloody land. The environment here is a natural protective barrier." His big withered hand stroked the crimson wall that was creeping. "Go deeper, we have the gift of the God Lord, and the creatures here will not be hostile to us. It seems that it will take a few nights for the flesh and blood to descend. After a while, I will personally apologize to the God Lord, hoping to get the Lord's forgiveness." The voice just fell. Everyone only heard a loud bang. The ground of the entire bloody place suddenly trembled violently. The creeping bloody wall seemed to feel some kind of extremely extreme terror. In the heart-piercing screams, it collapsed here with tremors. What happened? The clown man was shocked, looking at the crazy falling stones. "Will there be an earthquake here?" "It's not an earthquake." The fool's eyes were deep, and he looked up at the long tunnel behind him. We were discovered." Those few short words shocked everyone in Taro present. How can it be? The eyes of the priestess were full of astonishment. "The place where we are staying is at least a few kilometers away from there. My dear, this is simply unbelievable." Among the crowd, a man wearing a tall hat, a suit and white gloves constantly changed his hands to play cards of different colors due to excessive nervousness. "Mission failed. We have no face to see you again, Lord God." Calm down. Compared with the panic of other people, the fool, as the oldest person here, is naturally relatively calm. He said calmly, "The bottom of the Scarlet Land is intricate and complicated. Now we have penetrated no less than 400 meters. Even if they chase it, it will take a lot of time. Why run?" The clown man suddenly made a sound. "There are 6 of them in total, and their strength is equivalent to the awakened ones of the 5th level of Daxia. In a head-to-head confrontation, Taro may not lose. The intentional escape before was also to lure these night watchmen to this bloody place, so that the flesh and blood can find the body and revive on this land. Even if the people from Great Shaw come after them, 3 of them are still in a half-disabled state. No matter how strong the young man who is alone is, the 6 of us may not be afraid." "No." The fool shook his head, staring directly at the top. "There is only one person." "What?" After hearing that there was only one person who was responsible for chasing them, the clown man even wondered if he heard it wrong. "What are you doing? Is Taro really a persimmon? Don't be careless, retreat to advance." Seeing that the clown man was a little dissatisfied, the fool explained while going deeper, "The heart is restless, so there is no way to become the confidant of the Lord God. That boy was able to lead the 3 injured people out of the swarm of thousands of scarlet beasts safely, and he was able to discover us who were hiding in such a short period of time. This is enough to show the strength of the opponent." The fool sped up a little more. "Although we have 6 people, the opponent's strength is stronger. If we really fight with him, the outcome is hard to say. Don't stop too much, keep going down. They have already familiarized themselves with the terrain below the Scarlet Land in advance, so move fast." In addition, there was already a distance of hundreds of meters. It will take a lot of time for the opponent to catch up with them here. That was enough to get them out of trouble. The fool already had a next thought in mind. Use the terrain here to delay the speed of the boy's pursuit. Take retreat as advance, and complete the instructions of God in completeness. He thought everything would go according to his ideas. But at this moment, a sword chi slashed down from not far in front of them. The vast sword intent extends for thousands of meters. These scarlet stone walls, which are as hard as the abyss, are like soft tofu in front of this sword intent. It shatters at the first touch. In the extreme astonishment of the Taro people, the stone walls around them began to peel off and collapse, and finally were obliterated by the sword intent into wisps of dust in the world. Fools see this and that. The brain shut down for a moment. The whole person almost didn't get along in one breath and passed on the spot. When everyone came back to their senses again, they were already in a deep pit around them. Lin Tian pinched the long sword transformed from sword intent with one hand, narrowed his eyes slightly, and looked at the tarot people below playfully. Chase. Who said you must go down and chase? Is the distance of more than 400 meters very deep? Just cut it with a sword. Yes, Lin Tian's sword. A deep pit of more than 400 meters was cut out of this scarlet land. Tarots are all foreigners, can't understand Daxia language. Then give them a little big summer shock. Red light sprinkled down from above. Fool, winking face. God, are you kidding me? F.A., what happened? Even by karma. Great God, Almighty God. Who can tell me what happened to this old comrade in his 70s and 80s during the few seconds he was in a daze? Plan Nima. Yes, that's right. Lin Tian's sword successfully broke through the defense of an old man in his 80s who had a lot of experience. The fool's expression froze, and the moment he saw the boy, his whole body exploded. The two looked at each other for a long time. There was a long silence. He was the first to speak out, and tentatively asked, "Hello, sir." Lin Tian stepped down from the air with a kind smile on his face, looked at the tarot people in front of him, and said with a smile, "Hello Nima, I buy karma, what is he talking about?" Below, the magician looked at Lin Tian who was slashing with his sword, and his expression suddenly became flustered. His hands kept changing playing cards that shone with strange light and threw them upwards. But these don't help at all. The poker cards that can instantly cut off the heads of fourth order awakened people can't wait to touch Lin Tian. It had already been shattered by the sword intent surrounding him. The priestess held up her staff and muttered words. Great God Lord, grant me the power of the flame elves, please burn everything in front of you. She finished the spell. In an instant, a flame giant several meters tall surged out of the ground roaring with a big sword in hand. Burn this arrogant man of great Sha to pieces. The priestess pointed at Lin Tian with her scepter. Then she turned her head quickly, and answered the magician's question resentfully. I don't know the language of Daxia, only the knights learned a few times following the will of the Lord God. It's a pity that they died in Daxia. The priestess pondered for a while, then immediately replied, it's not a good word anyway. Magician. Although he was speechless, the moment he saw the flame giant appear, he felt a sense of security in his heart. The flame giant summoned by the priestess was blessed by the God Lord. It contains nearly 30% of the divine power of a divine master. The power of a god, even if it is only 1/10 of the power, is enough to shake the sky. Use 30% to deal with the boy in front of you. No matter how powerful the opponent is, it may be difficult to resist. Seeing the flame giant facing Lin Tian aggressively, he rushed forward. The flaming giant sword in his hand slashed crazily at the human beings who looked like ants. Oh ho 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 ho. The temperature released by the giant sword seems to be able to incinerate the entire space. The steaming flames all over the body instantly illuminated the huge 400-meter deep pit. Several flaming sword marks lingered in the air. Finally, they all flew towards Lin Tian together. At the same time, facing these dozens of fierce flame sword marks, Lin Tian himself dealt with it relatively casually. The flame that is enough to burn the space seems to be not worth mentioning in Lin Tian's eyes. That's it. Lin Tian looked at the arrogant flame giant in front of him with contempt. The other party held his head high, and even poked his head at him and hummed twice arrogantly. Like this self-proclaimed guy. He has his own unique way of coping. After all, the last one bites an ant in front of his eyes, a mortal. Now it has been chopped into pieces and hung on the neck of the future girlfriend as a pendant. 3 times 5 divisions 2. Lin Tian stepped into the flames without even thinking about it. What temperature? His figure was fast, and he appeared on top of the flame giant in a few seconds. I feel cold even if I pull out a cupping pot. Say it. A sword fell. The sword intent galloped past, splitting the flame giant's body into 2 on the spot. But soon, the opponent's scattered torso began to recover at a speed visible to the naked eye. The other side. The tarot people thought they could deal with the young man with the flame giant. At this time, he has fled to a deeper place along the tunnel that has not been cut off. According to Lord God, The deepest part of the Crimson Land is a huge space that can hold millions of people. The inside is like an ant hole, crisscrossing. And there are stronger existences far beyond the group of bloody creatures on the surface. The play said that those creatures were the original inhabitants of the bloody land. Sacrifice, over there, is it really all right? The clown man and the other two tarot members around him asked with worried expressions. Should, no problem. The priestess nodded. The flame giant is the trump card bestowed on me by the God Lord. At least, it should be able to delay our evacuation. The front. The fool, who is the team's brain, said nothing at this time. Ever since he was almost scared by Lin Tian's sword just now. He, an old comrade in his 80s, began to doubt life. The priest is right, the fool added awkwardly, this is the power of the God Lord. You don't have to trust any of us, but you can only trust the power of the God Lord. The other party can sweep away those creatures from the abyss. It is a higher existence above all things. Whoosh. This time, not waiting for the fool to finish speaking. Everyone in tarot only saw a thing covered in fire running away from the fool. Fool. Everyone in tarot. Just, what did you run over to? Everyone was a little confused at this time. Ouch, ouch, epsilon equals single quote e. Everyone. No, you read that right. The one who was beaten has already learned how to scream. He is actually a flame giant with 30% of the power of the God Lord. Self-guided brain heaven's door plus BGM. I was so moved to tears. The priestess was standing there, and she felt that this world was particularly unreal. Especially the fool, when he watched Lin Tian continue to ravage the flame giant as a ball in his hands. This moment, his faith was showing signs of collapse. Enough is enough. Vladimir, you are already 89 years old, otherwise, stop living. The fool murmured in his heart. Along with his heart, it seemed as if it was ignited by fire at this time. He could already smell something burning, after all. That's a collapse of faith. Worth mentioning, just let it burn. The bigger the burn, the better. Until it becomes a pile of dead ashes without thinking and no one cares about it. That, dear fool. The magician poked the fool's waist with one hand and reminded him kindly, your hair is on fire. Ah, it turns out to be hair. The fool seemed to be relieved after hearing this. As long as it's not his mind. What, hair? My hair. The fool realized it later, and he held the flame on his head like crazy. Life root, this is my life root, God Lord. Oh my God. He has the gift of God. Therefore, the flames of the fire giant cannot cause any substantial damage to him. But, hair is not included in the essence. My hair, these are the only ones left. This moment, the fool didn't care about his 80-year-old age and kept banging his head against the wall. People can die, but you can't lose your hair. The other side. Lin Tian has completely wiped out the flame giant. Now, he no longer planned to give these tarot members any time to breathe. These people need bodies, although I don't know the other party's true purpose. But he had to know. If you really want to use the corpse to resuscitate something, they, a group of lunatics who are just like the divine cult, might actually sacrifice themselves. But as long as they are all wiped out and no one controls them, there is no way to start even if there are corpses. So, cut them all with one sword. The whistling sword wind groaned in the deep pit. There are 6 people from the tarot church this time. Including an 80-year-old silly old man, a mage, a magician Laodang, a clown, and 2 unnamed guys who were holding wine glasses and making soy sauce by the side. Now, Lin Tian looked down at the 6 people below, and slashed down with a sword in one hand. The 2 sword intents fused with each other, like a storm, which was about to swallow all the 6 members of the tarot church under their feet. Fool, what should we do now? The priestess is numb. After feeling the disparity in strength between the 2 sides, he completely lost the idea of struggling. Even the whole cards given to them by the gods were played by the opponent like a baby. How do they play? The flames above the fool's head have now completely dissipated. Watching the only half of his hair floating slowly from his head. Waiting for him to react. Half of his hair was turned into dust by the storm of sword intent. Fool, the last thread hanging in my heart snapped. Petrified on the spot, my heart was as cold as ice. The sword intent swept across. even though these members of the Taro Church tried their best to resist. However, his own defense was useless against Lin Tian's sword. With a light touch, it turns into a cloud of smoke. Immediately afterwards, Lin Tian, who was above the sky, did not let down his vigilance either. He used his sword intent to form chains to block all escape routes of this group of people. This sword is bound to kill the opponent completely. Leave nothing to chance for trouble. What should we do? Below, the magician's legs trembled and he almost fell to the ground. Master God, will you come to save us? The other side, the two church members holding the Holy Grail who had been playing soy sauce before. The holy water poured out of the cup seemed to relieve some of the pressure in their hearts. Go, I don't want to die, I still want to serve God. He shouted, and then rushed out of the range of the sword storm desperately. The next moment, several chains formed by sword intent flashed by. Before everyone in Taro came back to their senses, the two heads swayed blood and rolled to the spot. In less than a second. Didn't even see what killed them. What should we do? What should we do? Fool. Yes, fool. The clown man scratched bloodstains on his face with both hands, and roared, you are the most proud subordinate of the God Lord, the fool must have a way. A way, yes, the fool replied casually. The voice is weak. The moment when the last half of a hair dies from this world. The real Vladimir had already died in this world. Some people live, in fact, he is dead. What? When the clown man heard it, he rushed forward frantically, yes. Tell me quickly, we are going to die soon. Wait to die, the fool said softly. Yeah, we should listen to the fool now. The clown man was taken aback, what? Wait to die, there is no life left. The fool's voice was surprisingly calm. He stroked his shiny bald head, and pointed to the sword intent that was less than half a meter away from them. This is a kind of relief, and it is also the most satisfactory answer to the God Lord. Clown man. No, are you kidding me? It's not easy for Lao Su to live again. How dare you wait to die and let me lose so completely? He is called, the Hanged Man, in the Yarrow Church. Although dressed like a clown. But he's not a real clown. He looked up at the sword intent that had already touched his scalp. Saute, in an extremely resentful curse. The figures of the 6 members of the Taro Club completely disappeared in Lin Tian's sight. The sword intent swept across. The huge crater 400 meters deep is already devastated. Deep sword marks hang on the surrounding walls, densely packed. The sword intent gradually faded. 6 dilapidated corpses appeared before his eyes. Now, although 6 people were killed with one sword, but Lin Tian's heart has not settled down at all. Plus, no, there is always a feeling that something is not quite right. I don't know why. Maybe these things are dangling in front of his eyes. I just feel uncomfortable. Never mind, cut it all to pieces. Anyway, it would be a disaster for these lackeys of the gods to stay in the world. Just in case, don't worry about something else coming out of this place later. Say it. Lin Tian raised his hand and summoned another sword intent. He blasted at the 6 corpses headed by the poor 80-year-old man. They need corpses, although the other 6 had been completely wiped out by Lin Tian. But Lin Tian was still worried. Maybe there is a 6th child hidden next to him, and when he is not paying attention, he directly creates some kind of reincarnation of dirt. That would be a pain in the ass. So, Lin Tian, Jia. The next moment, the sword intent bombarded the ground. But instead of hitting the 6 corpses on the ground, they smashed firmly on the hard scarlet stone on the ground. Gravel flew. The 400-meter deep pit has now evolved into an 800-meter deep pit. As for where the body went, to this, Lin Tian's expression was unusually calm. It was expected. He just felt that a magical omnipotent force was forcibly creating some tribulations for him. But, where did the dead body go? Lin Tian didn't know either. Maybe it was swallowed by the crimson itself. After all, the period from the death of these 6 people to when he raised his second sword was only less than 2 seconds. Faced with this situation, Lin Tian flew out of the deep pit calmly. Then he found a place and sat down. It's all old-fashioned. The body is gone. What happens next? Of course something has to show up. Either a boss, or some kind of stronger elite monster. Lin Tian waved his hand. I'm used to it. Tens of seconds later, there were no surprises. The entire Scarlet Land began to tremble violently. Immediately afterwards, 6 ancient formations formed by coagulation of blood slowly lifted into the air. Pieces of beating flesh and blood condensed in midair, finally forming a ferocious head. The irregular fangs were exposed outside the flesh and blood, and the penetrating giant eyeball squirmed a few times, and then completely fixed its gaze on Lin Tian. Flash host, see the appearance of this monster. Lin Tian felt nothing in his heart. The strength is almost the same as that of the ancient god Swotoxin. At best, it can be regarded as a small boss. Maybe before the Eternal Night era comes. Creatures of this level have already reached the current fixed point. But for Lin Tian, who already possessed the sword soul of Jade Immortal. Sprinkle water. But there is one last point. Lin Tian said that he must complain. Grandmas. Before the recovery of the gods, someone had to preside over it. What's going on now? Is the times improving or the boss is sensible? Is it automatic? Gulu gulu. The large piece of flesh and blood was suspended in the air, and the eyeballs squirmed to scan Lin Tian below. The opened blood mouth opened and closed up and down, and the sound of a low growl came from the body. This thing. Lin Tian looked at the large fleshy ball that had come to life in front of him. It's a bit embarrassing. The creature in front of me is one of the aborigines of the Crimson Land, a host of flesh and blood. Close black lens bracket. The sound of the system rang in his ears. The strength is very weak. Lin Tian answered truthfully. The strength of this thing is equivalent to that of Swotoxin before. If it is him now. Don't say a sword. One punch might be able to knock out 3 fluttering moths. Let alone this thing in front of me. If you really deal with it seriously. Half a minute is enough. He could feel that the creature in front of him was extremely weak. Say it. Lin Tian tentatively cut a sword intent into the air. The Xiaoyao sword intent turned into a vast white mist in the air, accompanied by the faint crowing of Kunpeng. The sword intent pierced the sky and hit the fleshy ball firmly. Pooh! Viscous hot blood shot out from the body. Roar! The flesh and blood host was in pain, and his huge and bloated body trembled violently in the air. Lin Tian, wipe, hit, doesn't this thing hide? All right, he took back what he said earlier. Sortoxin, you are great. Now you have not been left behind by the version, and your strength is still very good. Just like this lump in front of you. It is very inferior to you. Looking at the flesh and blood host who spat out blood with just one sword strike. Lin Tian sighed, so crisp. Nonsense, of course this thing is brittle. Close black lens bracket. So weak. Open black lens bracket, he is the summoner. Close black lens bracket. Lin Tian. Next moment, the flesh and blood host suddenly let out an angry roar. The bloated blood clots all over the body separated from the body at an extremely fast speed. The body shrinks. But, in a blink, 3 long worms covered with scarlet scales appeared in the air, wriggling like centipedes. From large to small, 3 meters, 10 meters, 30 meters. 1 each. The yellow eyes looked at Lin Tian like crystals. Lin Tian, broken. What a summoner. This is made for the whole family. For a while, the tables turned. 3 long red worms surrounded Lin Tian's body, ready to go. Lin Tian pursed his lips. Sorry Sotoxin. I take back what I said earlier. You have become an outcast of the version, a moth forever. Don't be nervous, the Eternal Night era hasn't really come yet, and the bottleneck of biological strength that comes is almost equal to that of Swotoxin. Close black lens bracket. I see. Lin Tian nodded. At the same time, 3 long red worms attacked together. Spikes rained down from the sky. The impact, the acid, including the scarlet flame, instantly surrounded Lin Tian. The shrunken flesh and blood host glowed red all over. The red flames turned into chain whips, whipping from all directions. To this, Lin Tian's expression was indifferent, and his feet touched the ground gently. The moment the attack landed, it had already left its place and appeared in the air. Stepping forward with the sword, his movement is like a phantom. Easily dodge every attack of the flesh and blood host. After a while, Lin Tian fell to the ground unscathed. Look behind you again. The previous position was riddled with holes. 3 long red worms curled up into a ball in the air. After receiving the blessing of the flesh and blood host, it fell downward like a meteorite. And at this time Lin Tian. He moved his arms. It seems that during this period of time, he has already had a certain concept of his current strength. It may be a blow to be able to beat 3 Uncle Wangs before. But now, totally capable, probably bored. Lin Tian picked out his ears. Facing the 3 meteorites, he remained indifferent. You are the summoner. He gave the villain's evil smile again. 3 minutes ago. Hundreds of miles away, over the vast ocean, the wooden sword leading Qi Feng back to Daxia at full speed stopped suddenly. Not waiting for Shu Wenshan and others to react. There was a sudden tremor on the wooden sword. Immediately afterwards, under Qi Feng's astonished eyes, Xiaobai yelled, stretched his waist and emerged from it. Degree. She looked around blankly, finally confirmed the direction of Lin Tian. Xiaobai imitated Lin Tian and scratched his head, go. Then it turned into a soul body and disappeared. Qi Feng, Shu Wenshan, just now, what the hell is that? Ghost, from the sword, it seems to be looking for Lin Tian. Thinking of this, the two looked at each other. Since it is Lin Tian. That's fine, the crimson. Lin Tian kicked a falling meteorite. You are the summoner. He glanced at the flesh and blood host with disdain, and immediately felt something, and sneered, it's up to you. Come out, Xiaobai. The words fell. Woo. Xiaobai appeared in front of him in the form of a soul. With bare feet, her little face was slightly flushed from the rush. Huchi, Lin Tian, I regret it. I knew I wouldn't get her here. This guy comes. The blood-spitting scene that was originally pretending to be slapped in the face suddenly became cute. He raised his head and looked at Xiaobai, who was blinking his big eyes and looking at him with a puzzled expression. Never mind. Lin Tian touched his forehead. Go. Use a normal slash. Xiaobai immediately nodded. There was seriousness in his eyes. It's completely different from the image of natural dullness before. She stood up with bare feet, and gently shook her sleeve with one hand. The copper bell on the ankle made a crisp sound. Above the sky, wisps of primordial aura were drawn down from above the heavenly path. The picture of the fallen immortals seemed to appear in Lin Tian's eyes. Xiaobai looked at the flesh and blood host with a hint of contempt and disgust in his eyes. The next moment, she waved lightly with one hand. The entire Scarlet Land seems to have lost its luster at this moment. It was gray. There is no life, as if everything is frozen. The flesh and blood host's eyeball gradually turned from anger to fear. A sense of suffocation arises spontaneously. The 3 long red worms were disintegrated without a sound. Zushan time. The world is pale, and everything is silent. The flesh and blood host has no room to resist. It disappeared quietly in this silent sword. Did not leave any trace in this world. Lin Tian swallowed. He thought that Xiaobai was very strong. But, I never thought it would be so strong. Noob, Lin Tian called out tentatively. With his back turned to him, Xiaobai froze in place for a long time without moving. After a meeting, she suddenly lowered her head and rubbed her stomach with both hands, with an aggrieved expression on her face. Golem. Soon, Xiaobai turned around to face Lin Tian, and touched Lin Tian's pocket with one finger. Lin Tian, this is to eat meat buns. The vast sea. It's here. The sky and the ocean seem to be connected together, forming a shocking and amazing spectacle. 2 figures sit in the center of the scene. It is Poseidon, the god of the sea, and Tauric, the god of the sky. The time difference between the coming of the Eternal Night era and those guys getting out of trouble shouldn't be too big. Tauric behaved gracefully, looking towards the distant kingdom of Great Sha like a king. The Crimson Land has dropped its prototype on the Blue Star in advance, and the appearance of that thing should speed up the spread of the Crimson Land. Speaking of which, he spread his wings, glanced at the gilded scars on the edge of the wings, and a flash of hatred flashed in his eyes. How are your subordinates doing? A fool made a plan, and some of those people carried 30% of my divine power, and the flesh and blood host came. This matter will definitely. Poseidon paused suddenly at the end of his words, as if 3 threads in his heart were snapped suddenly. Failed. Tauric, what must happen? Bound to fail. There is no mistake. Tauric was very puzzled by what Poseidon said, and slowly put out a question mark. The person I sent is dead. Poseidon's expression turned sharply down, with black lines all over his face, in the Scarlet Land. It's really an accident. It seems that something happened over there that we couldn't predict. Torik waved his wings, his eyes full of divine light looked towards the direction of the Crimson Land. For a long time, he looked a little surprised, and murmured, "Your subordinates did not fail, they successfully summoned the flesh and blood host. But he is killed now." I heard his cry, after hearing this sentence. Even as a god, Poseidon could no longer suppress the emotion in his heart. Who is it? Although the flesh and blood host is the bottom of the aborigines in the Scarlet Land. But in terms of strength, he is not much worse than the 3 ancient gods who were the first to recover. To be able to kill him in such a short time. It seems that something extraordinary happened in Daxia. Poseidon's eyes were low, and his right hand subconsciously clenched the blue-gold trident. Is it related to the sword that appeared last night? Don't be so nervous. Torik didn't seem to be under too much pressure, and seemed to be watching the fire from the other side. It's just a flesh and blood host. The appearance of the other party can only speed up the current progress, but for the whole, it's nothing more than a gnat. You. Poseidon turned his head and glanced at the other party, hesitant to speak. After a long while, he said slowly this time, "That's right. What should come will always come. You and I both know that after the Eternal Night era, apart from a few ancient gods, we are all insignificant little characters. In the face of the real flood, no matter how strong Daxia is, it is just a light and lonely boat. The Crimson. Baji. Greater than less than. Xiaobai held a meat bun as big as half his face in both hands, and blew it happily. Hey. The breath of Zhu Xian's sword soul dissipated. When the world returns to its original color. Lin Tian only felt his eyes turn red, and then the breath of the Scarlet Land rushed towards his face again. The blood mist that burst open filled the air. The flesh and blood host who only played for less than 5 minutes. Pawn. The strength is so much stronger than Swotoxin. As a result, the cards were not as good as 1% of the former. Well, I'm so disappointed. Lin Tian looked at the flesh and blood host who had been beaten into ashes, and felt a burst of regret. Trouble. The answer is negative. In his eyes now, this guy is at best a combat power tester. It turned out well. It's hard to say. A few minutes later. After Xiaobai finished eating the steamed stuffed bun, his whole spirit suddenly cheered up. Whoa. It's none of your business. Lin Tian glanced at the other party in disgust, and waved his hand. Go back to the city, hang up on the crystal. Noob. Although do not understand, but still vaguely felt that Lin Tian wanted her to rest in the sword. Waited for a while. She blinked her eyes, and then her figure blurred and disappeared on the spot in an instant. Lin Tian stood in place. He was not in such a hurry to return to Daxia. There is one more important thing that has not been done. This is also the main reason why he chose to stay here, to wipe out those members of the Tarot Society who were watching from a distance and thought they were hiding well. Expand the sword net to the maximum. Lin Tian followed the route that the members of the Tarot Society had come to, and began to carry out a carpet-like investigation. Including this underground winding passage that looks like an ant nest. Northern Pass. 6 hours have passed since Lin Tian stepped into the nameless sea. Ma Chengyu was in front of the watchtower on the highest floor of the fortress, feeling restless. It's been so long. There is no news about Lin Tian at all. Since the opponent entered the sea area, the whole person seemed to disappear out of thin air. This little guy should be fine. He lit a stronger cigarette and took several puffs. Probably not. Grandma is a leg. Just asked about it. It is said that Mr. Lin's strength can beat 3 of his uncles alone, but I don't know if it is true or not. Ma Chengyu grabbed the few sparse hairs on the top of his head, feeling more and more anxious. If something happens to Lin Tian, his uncle must not get mad. Think here. Suddenly, on the screen in the calm sea area, 3 red dots suddenly flashed. Yes, at the same time, in front of the fortress. Almost dozens of past night watchmen spotted several figures on the sea. Thousands of soldiers instantly entered the fighting state. But when they saw clearly the identities of those figures on the sea, the tense heartstrings suddenly relaxed. It's Qifeng and Xu Wenshan. A night watchman said excitedly, even Yu has come back. Confirm your identity first and then confirm the fart. Ma Chengyu jumped down from the observation deck tens of meters high. I didn't see Mr. Lin's wooden sword bearing the rain. That's the best proof. Switch immediately. Welcome. He looked extremely serious. Yes, yes. A few minutes later. Below the fortress, watching the steel gate slowly lowered. Chi Feng speeded up a bit. At this time, Yu Yu's complexion was a little ugly, and she moaned softly due to the deterioration of the wound. Enter the fortress. Chi Feng shouted anxiously. Save people. Hurry up. A few minutes later, seeing Yu Yu being sent to the emergency room with my own eyes. Only then did his complexion improve. Not far away. Ma Chengyu didn't ask too much about the Scarlet Land. He looked at the wooden sword hanging in the air, and his heart sank. Chi Feng, Mr. Lin brought you back. Chi Feng nodded. Mr. Lin saved us. What about others? Chi Feng had an embarrassed expression on his face, and forced himself to speak. Mr. Lin escorted us back with his sword. He goes by himself. Tell me, what happened to Mr. Lin? When Ma Chengyu heard it, he instantly remembered the fear of being dominated by Sax back then. Vent your anger. Ma Chengyu. Mr. Lin didn't go back to Daxia with us. Chi Feng began to talk about what happened when he met Lin Tian. Mr. Lin escorted us with his wooden sword, but he chose to stay in that Scarlet Continent. Stay there to vent your anger. Ma Chengyu was obviously shocked by this statement. In that uncharted territory, to vent your anger. Isn't this nonsense? It should be to vent our anger. Mr. Lin insisted on letting us go back first. Chi Feng added. When the other party first met us, he single-handedly killed more than 1,000 scarlet creatures not weaker than A-level alien species. And what the other party said before he left to vent his anger. He paused. It seems to be those members of the Tarot Society. Ma Chengyu gasped. More than 1,000 creatures not weaker than A-level alien species. Or empty-handed. Is this the true gold content of an 18-year-old Zanshan? Think about it now. He seemed less worried than before. This sounds more than twice as strong as Wang Yangshi. Look, the rumors I heard just now are true. Don't talk about Big Summer. If there is a god standing in front of Lin Tian, what can he do? Lan Xing walked sideways up and down. Start now. The safest place in the entire Blue Star is no longer the imperial capital. But Lin Tian's warm embrace. Pull it down. Ma Chengyu waved his hand. According to what you say, even if the other party wants to die, no one can kill him now. It's your team. As he was speaking, he suddenly changed the subject, old Lu and the others. Ma Chengyu didn't continue talking. Perhaps when seeing only the three of them come back, they should understand the result. The atmosphere that should have been active suddenly became serious. Chi Feng and Xu Wenshan looked downcast. The four seniors in the team all sacrificed to cover them. It's even more pathetic. Protected Daxia for half his life at the pass. In the end, even if he died, he couldn't sleep peacefully in his own country, his hometown. Ma Chengyu's only remaining eye looked at the two people in front of him. For a long time, he sighed helplessly. How dangerous the unknown area is, you can feel it when you look at the surviving people after excluding Lin Tian. Some of the night watchmen who had been friends with the sacrificed people were already in tears at this moment. It's windy today, grandmas. Having fought half my life, my body is still strong, but my eyelids have become so weak. For Daxia, I have worked desperately to protect this border for more than 20 years, but in the end I ended up in an empty grave. Lu Laogan's family still has a girl who is a few years old. I watched them a few times when they played the video before. She is very cute. Okay, don't talk about it. I don't want to use the wind as an excuse later, it's too bad. The atmosphere fell into a downturn for a while. The few people who died were considered veterans in the pass. He was born and died for Da Sha, fell into desperation several times, and relied on the sliver of faith in his heart to hold on till now. For more than 20 years. If there is such a chance to pretend. They can say it with great pride in front of a crowd. I have killed more alien species than you have ever eaten. Unfortunately, there is no such opportunity. Light 4 bright lamps, Ma Chengyu said in a deep voice. This is the rule of their northern pass. Whenever a soldier died outside of Great Sha, they will light a lantern on the highest point of the fortress. The oil lamp is always bright, and the soul returns to the hometown. Hope those heroes, those soldiers stationed at the border, One day when I see these oil lamps, to be able to find the way home. At the same time, when Ma Chengyu prepared 4 oil lamps and planned to hang them on the highest point of the pass to light them, Lin Tian's figure appeared in front of him. It was brought back with it, and those 4 corpses. Under the gaze of all the night watchmen stationed here, he put the 4 of them lightly on the ground. Senior, you're home. A short sentence, but it made the noses of most of the border night watchmen present sour. This is why Lin Tian chose to stay there. These are the heroes who can give up everything, even their lives, for Daxia. Even if you die, you shouldn't die in another country. It is even more unbearable for those outsiders to be so intrusive. They are the heroes of Daxia, not the sacrifices needed to revive those creatures. When he knew that members of the Tarot Society needed these corpses, Lin Tian already had this idea. From beginning to end, he just wanted these martyrs who died for Daxia to go home. Back to my hometown. Back to the great Shah that he had guarded all his life. Ma Chengyu was watching this scene. The whole person couldn't help feeling a deep admiration for the 18-year-old boy in front of him. Mr. Lin. His voice was neither sad nor happy, but extremely solemn. Clatter. Thousands of night watchmen guarding the border moved neatly and their voices were crisp and clear. This is the highest etiquette of night watchmen. Welcome, the hero goes home. Go home. The loud and majestic voice echoed on the nameless sea area, setting off layers of waves. Qi Feng clenched his right hand and placed it on his chest. He swears, except when foreign enemies seize the city. During the past few years at the pass, there has never been a more serious moment than now. More than half an hour passed. Ma Chengyu's expression gradually returned to normal. He personally covered the 4 people with a white cloth. Report to the secretary. Arranged to be the family members of the martyrs, pensions, and the privileges that should be given, all of which must be passed within a day. Ma Chengyu's voice was calm. Don't let me delay those departments, not even for a minute. Dare to let the relatives of my brothers suffer, tell those people, don't blame me for turning against them. Commander Ma, you are serious. A night watchman reminded in a low voice. The department attaches great importance to these, and basically can pass within 3 hours after receiving the information. Besides, the man's voice was a little softer. Except for Liu Yuguo, the other 3 have no relatives at home except myself. Ma Chengyu's expression tightened. Yes, these old guys have been here for decades. The relatives that can be cared for at home. How many are there now? Including himself. As the army commander, in order to be stationed here, I didn't even see my parents for the last time. Ma Chengyu had a complicated expression. Neezy, dizzy, I'm a jerk. Ma Chengyu scolded himself. Suddenly I have the urge to buy a pack of cigarettes. No elevators, no stairs. The next day, take a short night's rest at the northern fortress. Lin Tian opened his eyes. In just 8 hours, he successfully experienced the hardships of being a night watchman at a pass. Although the built-in environment is clean and hygienic, including all kinds of advanced facilities, which are available outside, and the Night Watch Division will not let the people here suffer anything. But due to the particularity of the environment, as a result, the pass will experience personnel transfers every half hour. This includes guarding the watchtower 24 hours a day without interruption, and strictly inspecting every corner of the fortress every hour. It is so meticulous that even a 1-centimeter corner will not have any flaws. It has been decades since this northern winter dragon was born. Day and night, without interruption. Not even a single mistake was made during a foreign alien attack. It's here. None of the thousands of people complained, but only the determination to protect Daxia. Lin Tian stood under the steel gate. Ma Chengyu, including thousands of night watchmen behind him, stood straight in front of the fortress. Is your teammate okay? He glanced at Qi Feng, who was rescued by him yesterday, and asked. After rescue and timely delivery of fresh blood, the wound has stopped deteriorating and his life is temporarily safe. Rest overnight. Some color returned to Qi Feng's face, and he looked at Lin Tian with gratitude in his eyes. Mr. Lin, it's all thanks to you this time. Including all the situations discovered in the Scarlet area, as well as the giant meatball that can summon special creatures that you finally solved alone, we have reported it to the director truthfully. To the end, Qi Feng added, all the merits will only be attributed to you. Lin Tian scratched his head. This decision would certainly not have been the result if he had been on the scene. That being the case, he chose to respect Qi Feng's choice. Somewhat embarrassing. Lin Tian grinned, trying to ease his current embarrassment with a smile. Feng. Ma Chengyu patted Qi Feng's back hard twice with his rough hands, laughed and said, the situation is small. 18 years old with such strength. He is also a swordsman. Presumably, his state of mind has already reached a state that is difficult for ordinary people to fathom. How could he still care about this small achievement? To be honest, merits can be earned in the eyes of the other party. I really want the honor. Might as well imitate a certain speaker named Wang. Carrying the sword, he went directly into Huang Yunfei's office. Come to Secretary Liaodang, explode some gold coins, and show off some meritorious deeds. You have to have strength, you have background, you have age. Even the one with the best record in the entire division is his uncle surnamed Wang, who pioneered the method of bringing meritorious deeds. Really want this thing? It's a matter of one sentence. Play as a cracked version. Qi Feng stood where he was. He had been on the northern fortress since he was 19 years old and had been fighting until now. How could he understand this so-called worldliness? Commander, what do you mean? Alas, Ma Chengyu smiled meaningfully, you are still too young. You will understand when you are my age. Qi Feng. After the episode, everyone became serious again. Lin Tian stepped onto the wooden sword and planned to leave from here today. As for whether to go to the imperial capital or Tian, some trouble. The scene on the 7th floor of the abyss is vivid in my mind. He already had some premonition that danger was coming. Let's think about it on the way. Think like this. Suddenly, the deafening roar of all the past night watchmen headed by Ma Chengyu came from behind. All the northern night watchmen would like to express our gratitude to Mr. Lin. All the northern night watchmen would like to express our gratitude to Mr. Lin. The howling cold wind mixed with the messy blizzard still couldn't suppress this majestic sound. This scene, Lin Tian felt a little emotional when he saw it. At this time, the wooden sword under his feet suddenly trembled. Immediately afterwards, Xiaobai's eyes were a little confused, and the stupid hair on his head automatically formed a question mark. Oh, what's the matter? What was that sound just now? Who am I and where am I? Xiaobai, ha. He looked around blankly, his head spinning like a rattle. It looked like he was scared to death. Lin Tian. Ma Chengyu, Northern Night Watchman. The word, speechless, in capital letters filled the air that everyone breathed. Such a generous and passionate scene. After this little girl appeared, everything seems to have changed. The atmosphere is in place, and this scene is definitely an exciting and grand scene. But now, awkward, how embarrassing. Even a rough guy like Ma Chengyu, who was usually carefree, wanted to find a hole in the ground at this moment. Xiaobai. Degree. Lin Tian's mouth twitched. With his keen intuition, the embarrassment of those thousands of people had already made it difficult for him to breathe. Say goodbye to uncles. Lin Tian swallowed and hurriedly said to Xiaobai, say goodbye to them. Xiaobai. Give me a ball. It's over 40 degrees below zero. But Lin Tian was sweating profusely now. He pressed Xiaobai's head and bowed vigorously, say goodbye uncles. Zai, goodbye. Say it twice more. Goodbye. Okay. Lin Tian pulled Xiaobai and stepped onto the wooden sword in the air. Commander Ma, I will take the first step. Ma Chengyu, Northern Night Watchman. Xiaobai, confused face. Yes, everyone was so embarrassed that they might have dug out a forbidden city with their toes. Only Xiaobai, awkward, laughing to death, as a novice with max strength and max IQ. Why embarrassment? I don't even know, hundreds of meters in the air. Lin Tian pulled Xiaobai, as if he hadn't recovered from the embarrassment just now. Meow, I almost suffocated. He breathed a sigh of relief and warned Xiaobai, in serious occasions like this in the future, you are not allowed to come out casually. Do you understand? The past night watchmen are all heroes guarding Daxia. In that kind of scene, they should be extremely solemn and serious. He wiped the sweat from his forehead and continued, otherwise, I won't give you meat buns next time. A long string of words fell on Xiaobai's head, out the left ear and in the right ear. Laughing to death, Xiaobai couldn't understand it at all. In the voice that lasts for tens of seconds, She only heard the words meat buns. Drool immediately flowed from the corner of his mouth, and his eyes were shining like little stars as he looked at Lin Tian unblinkingly. Lin Tian, he was speechless. 10 meat buns, stay inside when encountering situations like this in the future. I thought the other party didn't understand. Result. Yeah, Xiao Bai nodded wildly. Lin Tian. Noon. The sun is shining brightly. Lin Tian stood in the air, looking up at the sun hanging in the center. Tisk, it's so hot. Look back. The northern border meets this normal plain. The sight of the two heavens of ice and fire is a spectacle. In the last second, he was in a world of ice and snow at -40 or 50 degrees. In the next second, the temperature turned sharply upwards, and the red sun was in the sky. Xiao Bai followed behind him. Blind guess is that I slept too much in the wooden sword. I don't want to go back and want to come out to play. As a result, I encountered such a ghost environment. She was shivering from the cold at first, but soon her little face turned red from the heat. Xiao Bai stretched his waist. Looked down to a clear winding stream on the edge of the plain. Didn't even think about it. Stepped in with bare feet, splashing layers of water. Wow, cool, hollow down pointing triangle. My feet are so cold. So cool. This feeling is simply wonderful. She kicked up the stream with her feet, and the crystal splashes shone brightly in the sun. Lin Tian stood aside. He ignored Xiao Bai who was playing in the water, and just took this time to think about it. Whether to go to the imperial capital or stay in Tian for a while. Lin Tian rubbed his chin and looked into the distance, full of thoughts. Focus on the bigger picture. The panic in his heart happened to deal with the tens of thousands of alienated angels imprisoned on the 7th floor of the abyss. From that day to now. It's been a few months now. Maybe it will break through in a few hours. It's too safe to go back at this time. It was just too risky. Once there is any mishap, the risk is too great. Suddenly, just when Lin Tian planned to return to the imperial capital to discuss this matter with Uncle Wang. In a trance, a majestic light gray sword energy brushed past his ears. There was a loud bang. The ground was cracked, and the momentum was terrifying. Lin Tian, his pupils shrank suddenly, looking at the blue sky that was divided into two in the distance. At this time, Lin Tian was numb. Many thoughts were completely scattered by this sword. Enemy attack. Kill the master. Could it be that Xiao Bai is rebellious? Lin Tian's Adam's apple fluctuated up and down, and he turned his head stiffly. The creek just now has long since dried up. Thousands of meters of sword marks are permanently engraved on this plain. Not far away, Xiao Bai kicked a few strange winged creatures. Her front. Lin Tian took a closer look. It is a crack in the abyss. His heart trembled violently. God, an angel. See these xenomorphs. Lin Tian admitted that he was a little panicked. But fortunately, after a simple confirmation, he found that these dead were only angels with 2 wings. This shows that they have not completely broken free from the dungeon. Only some weak fish that slipped through the net escaped by chance. It is similar to the one I encountered on the 6th floor of the abyss before. But these few were less lucky. After finally escaping from the crack, he ran into our, harmless to humans and animals, Xiao Bai. Xiao Bai looked at the corpses on the ground with a look of disgust. And that temporary crack soon collapsed because of Xiao Bai's seemingly random sword strike. Lin Tian looked at the space debris scattered all over the sky. Without any hesitation, step on the wooden sword and fly to the imperial capital. It cannot be delayed any longer. That dungeon won't last long. Already alienated angels have escaped from the abyss. Xiao Bai turned into a soul body and returned to Mu Jian's body. Lin Tian's figure turned into a sword shadow, flying thousands of meters away in the blink of an eye. Transient abyss is too unstable as an entrance. Once broken or recovered on the way in, it is easy to get lost in the abyss. It really doesn't make people rest all day. Lin Tian sighed. There are less than 2 months left. It's really difficult to think about the good years. Imperial capital. Director, the 2 speakers. Meeting room. Several night watchmen responsible for collecting information rushed into the room anxiously. Northwest, southwest, southeast, and northeast areas, there are many humanoid aliens appearing at the same time, and their types are similar to the one that Chairman Wang and Director Zhang killed back then. When Huang Xiaoyun heard this, his expression became concentrated, and he said seriously, "Did you deal with it in time?" "Well, it has been dealt with in time." The night watchman spoke in a hurry, and then said, "But the number of this kind of humanoid alien species is still increasing, and the range of appearance is increasing rapidly. Over 70% of the Great Sha border can see them." Subsequently, on the conference room screen, alien angels rushing out of the temporary cracks came into the eyes of all the night watchmen. Wang Yangshi sat in the front row of the conference room. After seeing these alien species, his heart suddenly dropped. It's these things. Alien angel. They are the top of the night watchmen. It is natural to know the astonishing information that Lin Tian brought out from the 7th floor of the abyss a few months ago. Tens of thousands of angels assimilated by the abyss were imprisoned in a dungeon, and will be out of trouble soon. Thus came the great summer. It's these angels. Are they out of trouble? A night watchman took a deep breath. They couldn't be more clear about the strength of these angels. The weakest winged angel alone has a strength comparable to that of A-level aliens. 4 wings already needs night watchmen above the 5th rank to deal with them. As for the 6th order, already comparable to a god. Still tens of thousands. What kind of concept? There are only a handful of awakened people above the 5th level in the Night Watch division. At the 8th level, there is only Wang Yangshi alone. Even if all of them sacrifice their lives for this, they will fight to the end. Daxia's ray of hope is still as vague as a speck of dust. Probably not yet. Wang Yangshi's tone was flat, and he scanned a few photos. The dozens of alien angels that came to this world mostly have 2 wings, and only a few have 4 wings. Shouldn't have escaped from the dungeon yet, but there is not much time left for Daxia. More and more angels escaped from the abyss. This shows that the dungeon is being disintegrated. From its discovery to the present, maybe a few months is the limit. It won't be long. Those angels will completely break free from the shackles of the dungeon. Come big summer, take a look at the night watchmen at the headquarters and branches. Huang Yunfei's heart was heavy. Notify all the people in Daxia, tidy up their clothes, suspend all activities, and evacuate to shelters in the near future. Yes, dare not have the slightest delay. Several night watchmen quickly left the meeting room after receiving the order. Huang Yunfei's pupils flickered faintly. There is not much time left for Daxia. Wang Yangshi leaned on the chair with her head up to the sky. We must not let those alien angels escape from the abyss. He hesitated to speak, but Huang Yunfei, including a dozen other night watchmen above the 6th level, already understood what the other party meant. He wanted to intercept these angels in the abyss. Although there is little hope. But for Daxia, they have to. From now on, those above the 4th level are not afraid of the dead. Come with me. The voice did not fall. The door of the conference room was pushed open, interrupting everyone's thoughts. A young man with a wooden sword on his back stood at the door. He smiled at Wang Yangshi. Uncle Wang, you know. The protagonist is often the last to appear. Right, Lin Tian. Lin Tian's arrival instantly shocked everyone in the conference room. Is he that Lin Tian? This is the first time I've seen him today. I heard that the other party can beat the 3 kings alone. With this young man coming, the chances of winning should be better. It has long been heard that Chairman Wang has an 18-year-old nephew who is now able to kill gods independently. You can kill gods at such a young age. With the addition of the other party, Dasha may have a chance. The voices of many night watchmen were noisy. It seemed that the smoldering flame of hope just now grew a little bit after Lin Tian's arrival. Shoutian, Wang Yangshi looked at him in surprise. Why did you come back so soon? Less than 5 hours had passed since the information about the Crimson Land was reported. I thought the other party would be later. Didn't expect it to be so fast. When I came back, I found an escaped angel in a crack in the abyss. I felt something was wrong, so I speeded up. Lin Tian walked into the meeting room and swore to everyone. I brought the information from the 7th floor of the abyss, so I should be responsible. Although there are many angels, they are not in despair. Give me the group of angels who are about to escape from the dungeon. With me here, nothing will happen to Daxia. Huang Yunfei looked at Lin Tian who said this, and felt a little touched for a moment. He turned around and said to everyone word by word. More than 10,000 angels are about to come to our homeland. They are like a natural disaster, like a butcher's knife lying in front of Daxia. You and I know the odds of winning this battle, even if there is little hope, even if there will be heavy casualties. But we will not retreat, and we will never retreat. Huang Yunfei's momentum was high. The power of a 7th-level awakened person circulated in his fiery eyes. When the dark night falls, we should turn the tide and help the building to collapse. This battle, for myself, for my family, for the people, and even for the whole great Shah. For a while, as chief executive, these words instantly ignited the fighting spirit of the audience. According to the statistics, there are hundreds of thousands of night watchmen. There is no one who is not afraid of death and lives for death. Just like that sentence at that time. Great Shah has thousands of years of history. Hundreds of millions of people can fall on time, fall on birth, old age, sickness and death. But I will never bow to this external disaster. Daxia shouldn't die at this time. Call together the night watchmen who are scattered around Daxia and above the 4th rank. Huang Yunfei's eyes were firm. Tomorrow, the night watchmen will dive into the abyss and suppress the angels. The words fell. Meeting room. Everyone agreed almost as soon as the voice fell. But eventually it was proposed. Some more powerful night watchmen were left behind to prevent the religious sect and foreign forces from taking advantage of it. It's summer now. Respond to the enemy on all sides, although it has not reached the point where the oil is exhausted. But there is a shortage of manpower visible to the naked eye. Lin Tian saw everything in his eyes. He has full confidence in suppressing those alienated angels with his current strength. Uncle Wang, director. At this time, Lin Tian, who hadn't spoken for a long time, said, "Can you all listen to me?" As soon as the voice came out, the meeting room suddenly fell silent. Wang Yangshi and Huang Yunfei looked at each other. Mr. Lin's strength and deeds are obvious to the night watchman, so you can rest assured. Then I said it, Lin Tian replied, and turned his gaze to Wang Yangshi in the first row, as if he had made some important decision. I want to dive into the abyss alone and suppress those angels. The words come out. Everyone was shocked. There are more than 10,000 angels that are comparable to the 4-winged angels that have reached the S level, and there are no less than a few thousand. What's more, there are seraphs with similar strength to the ancient gods. This size, even the entire Night Watch division may not be able to compete with it. Let alone relying on only one person. No, Wang Yangshi slapped the table to get up, looked at Lin Tian with a complicated expression. Lin Tian, this is not a joke, it is absolutely impossible for you to go alone. You are not the only one who can fight here, I disagree. The atmosphere in the conference room suddenly dropped to freezing point. When many people saw Wang Yangshi, the aura that had just been ignited instantly withered. It's not that I'm cowardly. Only on this occasion. It seems that only Speaker Wang is qualified to talk to his nephew. Lin Tian saw what the other party was worried about. Uncle Wang, the remnants of the divine religion are still dormant, but the overseas taros, including some gods, are already ready to move. The sudden appearance of the scarlet area similar to the abyss all shows one point. The eternal night era is coming soon. His voice was neither loud nor low, but it was enough for everyone present to hear clearly. If you all choose to dive into the abyss to suppress the angels at this time, you must be aware of the strength of tarot and members of the divine cult, but it's not something that just a few 4th and 5th level awakened people can handle. Behind us is Daxia, the people to be protected by hundreds of millions. But behind them are gods. The gods gave them great power. Lin Tian said this, and looked at Wang Yangshi again. Uncle Wang, Daxia cannot fall into emptiness, and there cannot be any seniors from the Night Watch division here. Speaking of which, Wang Yangshi's hands on the table were trembling uncontrollably. His face was livid, looking at Lin Tian for a long time speechless. Lin Tian's voice suddenly softened. The greater the ability, the greater the responsibility. The two sword intents have reached perfection. In addition, Xiao Bai, the sword spirit of Zhu Xian left over from ancient times. Furthermore, he also has a backhand that has never been released. This is his trump card. It is also his confidence to say that one person can control thousands of angels. Quote. Wang Yangshi shook her head lightly, but hesitated to speak. For the first time, Powerlessness and exhaustion appeared on the resolute face. Once upon a time, the figure of Wang Yangshi, who was so glamorous and intimidating to her generation, was also quietly lowered by the years. I thought I could rely on myself so that the young man in front of me would no longer have so many responsibilities and pressures. But he was wrong. From Lin Tian's first appearance, he should have thought about the result now. The light emanating from the opponent's body has far surpassed him, even overshadowed him. This moment, Wang Yangshi looked at Lin Tian. No one knew what he was thinking. Tangle, worry, self-blame, hesitation. For a long time, he sighed deeply, and said in a low voice, Lin Tian, you are very strong, this is recognized by the night watchman. But tens of thousands of angels broke free from the dungeon. This is no child's play. The price and consequences are unbearable for Daxia. And how do you prove that you have the ability to suppress angels? Yes, I heard this. The other night watchmen began to discuss in low voices. Lin Tian didn't speak. He looked at Uncle Wang, as if he guessed what the other party said next. Uncle Wang, I'll give you away. Wang Yangshi's expression was indifferent. He looked at Lin Tian and said indifferently, as one of the chairmen of the Night Watch Department, an 8th-level awakener, he can resist more than 5 ancient gods with all his strength. Beat me, this abyss. I will let you down. Up and down the Night Watchman. We all know that Wang Yangshi loves saving face. But now, he had to use this method. This is also Wang Yangshi's final struggle towards the young man in front of him, as well as himself. Huang Yunfei looked at each other. Half an hour. He closed his eyes and said nothing. On the clearing, there was no one around, and there was no sound. Only Lin Tian and Wang Yangshi stood in the center. Everyone chose to retreat silently. This is a problem between them. Watching the excitement and eating melons. That's not what they're supposed to be doing these days. I don't even have this thought. Win me, this abyss. Uncle Wang let you go. Wang Yangshi's expression was heavy. His voice was flat, without any emotional fluctuations. As if numb, he stood there and looked at Lin Tian, who was not far away. Uncle Wang, Daxia is facing such a situation now, someone must stand up. Lin Tian spoke slowly. He never thought about it. One day I will stand in such a place with Uncle Wang. Shoutian. Wang Yangshi finally calmed down. His voice was weak. Someone needs to stand up, but I don't want anyone to stand up. Only you. Big Shah, it hasn't fallen to the point where no one is there yet. When he said this, his face was a little struggling. Uncle Wang, think about it carefully. Lin Tian pursed his lips. Right now, besides you and everyone in the Night Watch Division, who else can stand out in this turmoil? How many people in Yangyang Daxia are content with the present world? How many of them can cross the Dome Mountain of Fear? There is not much left for Da Sha to walk. Lin Tian's voice calmed down. He looked at Uncle Wang. You don't know these Uncle Wangs. You're just kidding yourself. You asked me why I wanted to be a night watchman, and now that's why I chose to. He continued to persuade. What the so-called opportunity will be, I don't know, but I think you must have your own opinions. Big Shah is facing many powerful enemies in the vast darkness. It needs a man standing at the forefront with sword hilt. The vast darkness covers the sky, and although the fire of a star is small, it is not impossible to shine. Lin Tian seemed a little impatient. The coming of the eternal night era is not as simple as the angels getting out of it. The ancient gods who are ready to go in those regional planes that have descended on Blue Star. These are inseparable from you and the entire Night Watch Division. Leave the abyss to me. As for the others. Lin Tian looked at Wang Yangshi and said slowly, Uncle Wang. You boy. Wang Yangshi looked up at the sky. How could he not understand what Lin Tian said? Now this point. Everyone in the Night Watch has different responsibilities. I am sure to guard the abyss. Lin Tian looked firmly. This is the safest method at present. Otherwise, with the current situation of the Night Watch Division, most of the staff will be allocated. Once the gods take advantage of the gap, the consequences will be disastrous. We can't live without you, Uncle Wang. Okay. The gold-plated spear emerges from Wang Yangshi's hand. Suddenly, it seems that there are bursts of dragon chant. A long golden scale dragon roared down from the sky. The momentum is shocking and full of strength. Wang Yangshi's figure moved suddenly, the spear in his hand pierced the sky, and he swam like a dragon. Beat me, this abyss. Uncle Wang let you go down. Quote. Lin Tian didn't speak, facing the strongest night watchman of all ages. He didn't dare to be careless. In an instant, the distant sky was covered by two artistic conceptions. The Kunpeng that roams the sea of clouds confronts the golden dragon that stretches across the 9 heavens. Lin Tian holds a sword in one hand. Next moment, the sword is facing the gun, and the force is heavy. The two kinds of artistic conceptions go straight to the sky, breaking through the clouds for thousands of miles. This is the weight of the strongest night watchman. Lin Tian only felt his hands sinking. Facing the galloping spear, his footsteps were as swift as a shadow. Uncle Wang, seriously. Wang Yangshi interrupted Lin Tian's words, you think Uncle Wang is weak? Repeat. Beat me, this abyss. Uncle Wang will let you go. Suddenly, the Xiaoyao sword intent and the golden dragon spear intent collided with each other and cancelled each other out. The two turned into two beams of light in the field. Spears and swords sparked dazzlingly in the air. The space was shattered, and the earth was in turmoil. Two gilded dragons circled in the air. Lin Tian raised his wooden sword. Xiaoyao Jianyi waved sword energy in the air, hanging upside down thousands of miles away. Boom! Wang Yangshi backed away. Surprisingly, he did not choose to continue this fight. The gilded spear turned into powder and disappeared from his hand. Wang Yangshi smiled wryly. I lost. He could feel that his nephew hadn't used his full strength from the beginning to the end. By contrast, as an elder, he seemed to be messing around. Yes, this farce started by him should also be over. Shoutian. Wang Yangshi shook off his sleeves. The child has grown up, no one can control it. He sighed, looking at Lin Tian. Go. The abyss. I will leave it to you. Lin Tian clenched his fists. This time, he must do his best. For the agreement between him and Uncle Wang. For this time, the family can have a good year together. Don't worry, Uncle Wang. He touched the tip of his nose and smiled. After all, I'm very strong, so I won't lose. You boy. Wang Yangshi looked at the brat in front of him and smiled helplessly. He came to Lin Tian's side. You can rest assured here, too. Except for the abyss. Let Uncle Wang come. Good. Lin Tian nodded. Wang Yangshi did not answer. There will be a day when the sun will set. The clouds parted. The afterglow of the setting sun shone on Uncle Wang. He finally patted Lin Tian on the shoulder, turned around and walked leisurely to the outside. Clean up. Big Shaw's future is in your hands. Just like Zhang Chengwen at that time. His pace was very slow. It seems to be saying a final goodbye to something. When the sun goes down, it will rise again. Lin Tian stood in place. Looking at Wang Yangshi's back under the setting sun, she seemed a little lonely and unwilling. Uncle Wang. He looked at each other and suddenly spoke. What's wrong? Wang Yangshi stopped and looked back. What are you doing standing there? You seem to be hunchbacked. Wang Yangshi. He was taken aback for a moment, then laughed and cursed. Stinky boy. When will you enter the abyss? Wang Yangshi changed the subject and asked again. The sudden earnestness caught Lin Tian off guard. I don't want to delay any longer. Tonight. Also good. Wang Yangshi sighed. Stop standing still, hurry up and get ready. Ah, oh well. Lin Tian nodded repeatedly. He intends to directly suppress the angels on the 7th floor of the abyss when they get out of trouble. This also avoids subsequent troubles. In front of the door, Wang Yangshi lit a cigarette, then stretched out her little finger. Don't forget our agreement at that time. Thanks for watching, please like and subscribe. Chapter 141. Before the abyss crack, the empty ghost roared in this dark blue space. Lin Tian didn't organize too many things. It's still the same outfit as when I was in Tian number 1 middle school. A red sweater with a hood, plus a pair of black casual trousers. And a wooden sword wrapped in white cloth on the back. In front of Lin Tian, tens of thousands of night watchmen stared ahead. It was a moment that will go down in history. One person suppressed more than 10,000 angels. But the person who is about to do this is only an 18-year-old boy. Stinky boy, leave the abyss to you, and the other uncles will solve it. Wang Yangshi patted Lin Tian's shoulder, and there seemed to be a strange streamer flickering in those slightly dim eyes. He took out a pack of cigarettes from his breast pocket. If you come out, you will be the sky after the night watchman. Man, I won't say anything nasty. Finish these few sentences. Unexpectedly, Wang Yangshi left here before everyone else. He couldn't bear the scene in front of him. I'm afraid that if I look at it for a second, tears will come out. Huang Yunfei looked at Wang Yangshi, who was gradually going away, turned around and said to Lin Tian, "Your uncle Wang is old, so you can't see these things. If the tears really fall later, the whole audience will suffer." Understand. Lin Tian showed an expression that I understand, very capable. That's good. Huang Yunfei glanced at the luminous blue cliff like the deep sea from the corner of his eye. When you return from suppressing the angels, Daxia will celebrate with you. Must. This time, in Lin Tian's heart, he was not looking forward to any grand and magnificent farewell scene. One goes, one returns. Being safe and sound is what is expected in my heart. At this time, it is undoubtedly depressing and heavy in the hearts of everyone. The night is long and the stars are shining. Under the bright moon. The bright blue cracks in the abyss are like stains in the great summer. Tens of thousands of night watchmen stand in this forest. Their faces are determined, each with the determination to fight to the end. And Lin Tian, although it looks extremely small under the crack, but he is like the last embers of hope ignited by Daxia in this vast and raging tide. From the year before last to the present, Lin Tian took a step forward, gradually disappeared from everyone's sight. Inside the Night Watch division, Wang Yangshi stood on the top of the building. His figure was slightly tired and thin. With a light cool wind blowing, wisps of white smoke slowly floated to the far side. "Why, are you still worried about your favorite eldest nephew?" The elevator sounded. Huang Yunfei walked out from inside. He carried 2 bags of beer in his hand, randomly placed them on the ground, and took out a bottle from them. Click. Really, when you hear the sound of gas blowing out. He sighed slightly. Does this sound uncomfortable? Waited for a while. Seeing that the other party didn't respond, he smiled lightly and didn't care. A bottle. Click. At some point, Wang Yangshi had an extra bottle of beer in his hand. Have a drink. The two leaned against the block, and stood side by side, looking at the neon blinking imperial capital beneath their feet. I have many thoughts. He raised his head silently. Looking forward to the future of Daxia together. For a long time, Wang Yangshi threw the empty wine can into the trash can behind him. Do you remember more than half a year ago? With a slow voice, he turned his head and looked at the 2 plastic bags filled with beer. At that time, I was holding a meeting due to the unusual activity of the alien species. Whoever thought? You just carried them like this, and walked in swaggeringly. What are you talking about? My nephew is a genius. My nephew is hanging out. I am happy as an uncle. Huang Yunfei recounted the scene at that time, and said with a smile, I thought you kid was messing around. In the end, that kid Lao Zhang also came over to join in the fun, and what he was bragging to your nephew was just hype. For Lao Yang's face at the time, I reluctantly believed it, but I still remained skeptical about your nephew who had never met. After all, you brat, are bragging too much against the sky. It's off the charts. He got up and opened a can of beer, and after drinking most of it, he said cheerfully, as a result, how long has it been since that day? Your nephew actually killed a god. It took more than a week of fierce fighting here, the burning of life, the sacrifice of sacrifice, and this is enough to kill 2 of them. The result was good. I asked after the battle. The other side ended that day, and the 2 of them with 2 swords resolved the battle in less than 3 hours. He joked, I didn't know until then that what your kid said about your nephew. It's still restrained. Compared with your nephew's current achievements, it doesn't match at all. A long series of words spit out from Huang Yunfei's mouth. Since he became the chief director of the Night Watch division. It's been a long time since I talked so heartily. Around, Wang Yangshi drank wine silently, blowing the cold evening wind. Her mind was in a mess. It is different from the previous one who made Lin Tian the son of the plain, the reincarnation of an ancient boss, and the hanging wall with its own wind spirit and moon shadow. At this moment, Wang Yangshi was in a calm mood and spoke lightly. My nephew, he's great. Those short sentences carried his thousands of complicated emotions at this moment. Huang Yunfei was startled. The 2 looked at each other, and they both raised the cans in their hands in a tacit understanding. Light touch. Huang Yunfei looked solemn. He is the future of Daxia. Details in place. In the abyss. The abyss at this time has completely changed the secondary scene. The lava ashes pervading the air, mixed with abyssal cells, are constantly trying to break through the sword intent attached to Lin Tian's body. The abyss seemed to roar. He is restless at the moment. Lin Tian dived very fast. It didn't take long to reach the 4th floor of the abyss. Lin Tian found a place to stay. All around are the sword marks left by him when he came before. At this moment, the stone wall of the abyss trembled slightly. The alien species that were originally here have disappeared at this moment. They are all afraid of the angels imprisoned in the 7th layer. SS-level aliens are no exception. After all, Uncle Wang frequently went on missions before. All the beheaded were SS-level aliens who escaped from the cracks by avoiding these angels. The slag and stones shattered under this tremor. As a result, a large amount of lava and hot gas spewed out. The flow of time in the abyss is dozens of times faster than the outside world. Although he has no concept of time here, but only during the period from the 1st floor to the 4th floor, the reality may have passed a few days. Lin Tian's thoughts moved slightly. The sword intent swung wildly away from the hot lava, reopening a path leading to the lower layer of the abyss. Bang! The gravel rolled down, and the atmosphere was oppressive. The weird and ethereal BGM immediately rang in my ears. The 7th floor of the abyss. The dungeon was shaking violently. The majestic whispers of beings from unknown lands. Lin Tian stood in the air holding his sword. They are about to break free. 7 levels of the abyss. On top of the gravel mountain. Lin Tian didn't know how long he had been standing here. Behind him, dozens of alienated angels were chopped off on the spot, their broken wings scattered everywhere. The corpses were piled as high as a hill. During this period, angels are escaping from dungeons with increasing frequency. A roar like a purgatory came from the depths, accompanied by tremors like an earthquake. Lin Tian took out the corpse of the human predecessor who was originally guarded here and placed it in an undisturbed place. The dark blue bricks of the dungeon gradually collapsed until the deep black hole leading to deeper layers was revealed. Countless innocent souls rushed out from it, roaring and struggling. Lin Tian looked at the broken souls who were constantly tearing at his face. Finally, he was wiped out in extreme regret. The mysterious whispering voice grew louder. The chain shook violently. The upper level of the dungeon has completely collapsed. But what makes Lin Tian feel strange is, other places have been shattered, but those murals are still standing there quietly. The angel's frantic struggle seemed to have no effect on it at all. Lin Tian stepped forward. It was these murals that made him learn about the unknown areas outside Daxia for the first time. Borderless land, Knights of the Apocalypse, Era of Eternal Night. Or the source of all this disaster. This figure who can make all the ancient gods surrender willingly, is a figure wearing a scarlet hood. Roar! Suddenly, a deafening roar came from the deep pit leading to the lower level. The sound of broken iron chains reached Lin Tian's ears. The pit shook. It seemed that in the next second, those tens of thousands of angels would crawl out of the hole. The wooden sword flew out from behind him. A slight movement of thought. 2 streams of sword intent floated out from the sword body. Suddenly, Lin Tian felt as if the murals around him came alive. From the first frame, the vast universe began, and the scenery inside began to move slowly. Until the end, the groups of ancient gods were marked with scarlet eyes one by one, and they knelt down devoutly under the palace built on the void. Lin Tian was slightly startled. Suddenly, an illusion similar to entering a mental scene came to my mind. These murals seem to have traction. I just feel like my consciousness is being drawn in, unable to break away. Coming to his senses again. As soon as Lin Tian opened his eyes, he felt a dazzling and hot sun. The surroundings are no longer dark blue abyss stones. The dungeon and the abyss disappeared, replaced by a sea of clouds. Brown trees take root in the clouds. Lin Tian pinched himself subconsciously. After realizing that this was not a dream, his chaotic thoughts immediately calmed down. After all, he had experienced many situations similar to this before. Like the young man who used 10,000 swords for the first time in the poisonous mist, or the inner scene that exists within his own body. The place where he is now is almost the same as before. Only this time, it seemed that I had entered those murals. For the time that is currently happening in the outside world, there should be no major problems in a short period of time. If only awareness entered into the mural. There are two sword intentions, Xiaobai's and his own. The group of angels won't be able to fight for a while. But as time goes by, it becomes difficult to say. More than 10,000 angels emerged from it, and it might be okay to rely on them alone to protect themselves. But don't forget it. His purpose was to strangle these angels in the cradle right in the abyss. Don't let it escape from the abyss and come to this world. So now, what he has to do is to hurry up and find a way out of this mural. I simply tried the method of getting out from the mental scene. Too bad nothing happened. That being the case, he can only sacrifice his big baby. Lin Tian took a deep breath and calmed down his breath. Call, system. If you are unresolved, go to the system. The text on this mural was originally answered for itself. Maybe the other party has a way to get out from here. Hehe, I only think of this system when I encounter something. Close black lens bracket. The system replied in Lin Tian's body a little arrogantly. You are here, I thought you were not here. Nonsense, this system is bound to your soul, even if you are crushed to ashes, this system still exists. Close black lens bracket. Lin Tian, familiar feeling. Sure enough, the system is the one who can speak. If you don't listen to it for a day, you will feel uncomfortable, and if you listen to it, you will feel uncomfortable all day. This place, do you have a way out? Look at it where it is. Close black lens bracket. What? Lin Tian's mouth twitched. Are you farting? Open black lens bracket reel. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. You do not trust me. High-pitched questioned, sad, oh, man. How can you tell me to believe you? The atmosphere changed subtly. After a meeting, the slow system sound sounded again. It's good to really wait here. If the mural is not broken, those seraphs will not be able to come up, and the ones that come out are all miscellaneous fish. Close black lens bracket. So, how do I get out? System. Open black lens bracket exist. Original. Land. Wait. Close black lens bracket. I don't. Lin Tian shook his head. Tell me why. These murals were coherent before, when the dungeon was not broken and the time had not yet come. Close black lens bracket. Now that the eternal night era is coming, these murals will answer most of the questions you want to know. Close black lens bracket. You may not understand many places when you look at it, but when you enter these murals, you can experience them yourself like a slideshow. Close black lens bracket. The sound of the system paused. In the end, you will still see the source of all these disasters thousands of years ago, the final disaster. The final disaster. This again. He had heard the system mentioned before. But the other party just didn't say what it was. Lin Tian guessed by himself. The so-called final disasters are those scarlet figures who can make the gods surrender. Waited in place for a while. In an instant, the holy light shines, and the clouds swing open a golden gate of heaven. The majestic piano sound is melodious. The door is open. The pure white holy light shone on Lin Tian, but he couldn't feel the slightest warmth. Look down. Lin Tian found that his body became transparent at some point, like a ghost. As if I was just a spectator, unable to have any influence on everything here. It's like watching the scene of the masked boy using the sword to return to one moment in the heart. Lin Tian stood in place. Inside the gates of heaven. Digital figures walked out slowly. Their pupils are as hot as holy light, and they exude a holy radiance. Lin Tian stood in place and witnessed these creatures pass through his body. Swish. The 6 wings spread out, and gusts of wind blew past. The white feather fluttered down in front of Lin Tian's eyes. Seraphim. He turned to look at the figures walking into the tan trees. This is heaven. Look at everything around you. Lin Tian suddenly realized. FK, I actually went to heaven. To be precise, this is the holy land of the angel family. Close black lens bracket. Angel family. You should remember what this system once told you. Close black lens bracket. Forget. System. I don't believe what this system said. You actually forgot. Sad, oh, man. You mean that there were many races in the starry universe? Look at what the system looks like. No way. Just follow it. Humph, why, I forgive you if you still remember this system. Close black lens bracket. Listen to the sound of the system beeping. It feels like the other party's heart is about to explode with joy. Open black lens bracket. There were not only many races in the starry universe, but tens of thousands. Close black lens bracket. What? Hearing this sentence, Lin Tian was glad that there was no water in his mouth, otherwise he would spit out a few ticks to express the shock in his heart, including today's Daxia. Open black lens bracket. Yes. Close black lens bracket. Speaking of the system's voice seems to be mixed with many memories. But the Great Shah at that time was still called the human race, and there were thousands of races in the universe, including the gods today, the former god race. Close black lens bracket. I see. Lin Tian nodded. It seems that the so-called ancient gods are left over from that era. So, he seemed to think of the fear Sotoxin had shown before he died. Could it be that the once strong man of the human race cast a psychological shadow on him? Should be. Otherwise, that guy can't just want to enslave the current human beings as soon as he comes out. May I ask, the human race or the god race, who is stronger? Of course it is the human race. Close black lens bracket. How do I remember you saying that the gods were the strongest race in the universe? Lin Tian narrowed his eyes. You kid can't eat the settings, right? Or, time has passed so long that I forgot everything I said. Nonsense. How could this system forget it? Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. What this system is talking about is only on the bright side of the universe and starry sky, including the angel family you see now, and the iron-eating beast family that have disappeared in the long river of time, etc. Close black lens bracket. They are all strong races in the starry sky universe, and they can be ranked in the top 10 among tens of thousands of races. Close black lens bracket. So what about the human race? What are you urging? Close black lens bracket. Why are you yelling so loudly? Opening square bracket. Although the human race is as powerful as the immortals, they basically choose to live a peaceful life in the mountains and forests. The human race is also the most comfortable one among the 10,000 races. Close black lens bracket. Such a Buddhist. Aren't you afraid of being bullied and plundered by other races? Open black lens bracket. How can it be? Close black lens bracket. The tone of the system was a little excited. I ask you to listen to the system. Close black lens bracket. The reason why the human race chose to fade out of the sight of the 10,000 races was because they were tired from fighting. The tens of thousands of races in the entire universe starry sky were almost hammered by the human race, and they were still crushed. Close black lens bracket. Including the strongest gods, that is, the Protoss. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. They are also known as the strongest and only stood up after the human race announced their retirement and tried countless times. Close black lens bracket. Lin Tian. Okay, he is superficial. It's really boring to fight invincible players all over the world, no wonder you don't retire. The carefree old man and the old man with missing front teeth, or the masked boy with thousands of swords returning to one. Could it be that they are all from the human race of that era? You think well. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. They are all. Close black lens bracket. And after that, Lin Tian suddenly became curious. He has seen the strength of these seniors, and each of them is almost like a fairy, unfathomable. Open black lens bracket them, close black lens bracket. The sound of the system was inexplicably sad again. All are dead. Close black lens bracket. Dead, dead. Open black lens bracket. Well, dying from exhaustion, the whole human race, is almost like this. Close black lens bracket. Because of the eternal night era, or because of the end calamity. Open black lens bracket. Final disaster. Close black lens bracket. The short two words seemed to cover everything. Open black lens bracket. Witness it well, understand the final disaster thousands of years ago from the perspective of the angel family. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. That is the despair that suffocates all races. Just the abyss released by him, almost plunged the entire starry universe into a doomsday. Close black lens bracket. The voice fell. The mural where Lin Tian is located seems to have been pressed on the fast-forward button. In the brown woods, several angels with 6 wings on their backs looked anxious. Gabriel, will those things really come? There were pure white flames burning in his eyes, long flowing golden hair, and a red cross long sword in his hand. Archangel Seraphim, Michael. Lin Tian couldn't believe it. The solemn and majestic angel in front of him is the legendary Michael. Then what his eyes showed, should be another archangel Gabriel. Gabriel shook his head. Those things issued an ultimatum to the entire universe, and today, drowned everything. They don't belong to the starry universe, the unbounded place. This place has never been heard before. There is also the so-called final disaster. It's a joke. The other side. The third archangel Raphael cursed. Although there are frequent battles in the universe and starry sky, all races cannot tolerate these outsiders. It's ridiculous. Since they want to fight, let's fight with them. This moment, the fourth archangel, Uriel, stood up. This matter is related to the safety of the entire starry universe, and we must not act rashly. Act rashly, Raphael snorted coldly. Although we, the angel clan, don't like war, but for those arrogant outsiders, don't say that the 10,000 clans can't bear it. I can't bear it either. Lin Tian, who was standing in the distance watching everything, listened to all the words they said. He understood. The 7 co-authors are the 7 archangels of the angel family. No wonder the breath feels so powerful. Anyway, stronger than Swotoxin. Well, my stupid fluttering moth. It's not that I think you are weak. It's that every creature he sees now is stronger than you. Be good, be obedient. Die quietly. How long until the ultimatum? Michael's eyes were burning with flames, and he looked up at the sky as if he had penetrated thousands of distances to reach the starry sky of the universe. The galaxy is long. Countless planets, large and small, lie beneath the starry sky. They are all races, and the deepest part is also a place shrouded in clouds and mist, isolated from the world. There is a blue planet. It's best to wait and see what happens. After all, there are Protoss above ours. If they can stop it, we don't have to take action. Gabriel's voice came slowly, but no one noticed. Not far away, Michael looked serious, and suddenly withdrew his gaze from thousands of miles away. What followed seemed to be some sort of backlash. Sweat fell down, and red gold blood flowed from his eyes. He ignored the blood, but panted heavily, weakly said, "They come." Cosmic starry sky. The dark red clouds seemed to break through the starry sky for hundreds of millions of miles, until they enveloped the entire universe. For a while, when all races are still in a comfortable and peaceful life, day suddenly darkened. The crimson moon was in the sky, and a pair of dark red eyes were staring at the starry sky below. Lin Tian looked up. The look of those eyes was all too familiar to him. The mark engraved on the ancient god is the shape of this eye. Creepy and suffocating. Lin Tian's face was ugly. He didn't think about it. Even if I am in the mural, I will still be affected by these red eyes. Dense sweat oozed from Lin Tian's forehead. The scarlet hoodie was unknowingly wet. It's a scary feeling, and this was just a stare from Su Shi's understatement. When the 7 archangels saw the red moon and the red eyes reflected in the sky, the 6 wings spread out in an instant. The eternally burning flame instantly engulfed the entire angel family. But the dark red cloud seems to be able to penetrate everything. Raphael looked up into the sky, after seeing that the flame that his clan was proud of to burn all the evils in the world was easily suppressed. The 6 wings trembled suddenly, not daring to say, "Then, that is from my clan." "This is a disaster," Michael said in a deep voice, "and the owner of those eyes is the final disaster." He remembered 10 days ago. The cosmic starry sky was inexplicably torn apart by a dark red mist. A space full of nothingness as far away from the starry sky. The figure in the red hood had an indifferent voice, and gave an ultimatum to the starry sky universe with a tone of contempt. 10 days later, this universe will be shrouded in disaster, and everything here will be reshuffled by the final disaster. At that time, the eternal night era will come, and all things surrender. The words fell. 4 figures once again appeared in Michael's mind. The opponent was also wearing a hood. But it is different from the figure who claims to be the end of the disaster. These 4 were dressed in armor, like knights, and even he felt the slightest bit of fear in the aura emanating from their bodies. All races shudder. They come from beyond the star universe. From the void, the unbounded land, where no creature has ever been discovered. Back to the present, Lin Tian seemed to be able to see the memories in Michael's heart. The few figures that appeared among them were all portrayed in the murals. Calamity, final disaster. Lin Tian muttered something. He stands still. But the surrounding environment suddenly became unreal. Then, the scene changed. When Lin Tian's vision was completely clear, he was already in a vast starry sky. And here, the dark red flames mercilessly wiped out hundreds of planets with races. For a while, howling, crying, and mourning echoed in the vast cosmic starry sky. Lin Tian looked at everything in front of him. The heart couldn't help but thumped. This scene of extreme despair is like purgatory. Everywhere seemed to be suffocating. The bones of never-before-seen creatures piled up in mountains. The blood dyed the planets red, and was finally crushed into powder in the red mist transformed by the disaster. Those crimson eyes still hang above the universe, dyeing the whole scarlet into blood red. After a long time, I saw the torn-apart starry sky. Although the figure named End Calamity did not show up. But 4 figures slowly appeared in that grey palace. Apocalypse, Night. Lin Tian looked at the 4 figures descending from the starry sky, and his heartbeat couldn't help but speed up a bit. And they come. It also means the birth of the abyss of disaster. The destroyed races and planets were swallowed by the blue abyss. Under the erosion of the abyss, countless dead creatures of all races gradually became strange walking corpses. It is the origin of the heterogeneity. All the alien species lurking in the abyss. They used to be members of this starry universe. Just a few minutes, thousands of races have been destroyed by the disaster. And the strong clan that originally lived in the starry sky has just arrived. Headed by the angel family. After the 7 archangels and dozens of seraphs saw everything caused by the disaster, their anger was instantly ignited. Raphael's 6 wings trembled violently. Tears flowed from his burning eyes, unable to bear to look directly at the scene before him. I seemed to see those creatures of all races crying in front of my eyes. In the end, he was brutally burned to death by this dark red flame. As Raphael said, the 6 wings suddenly pierced through the starry sky and rushed straight towards the dark red blood mist. It can be next second. The whole air seemed to be still. Raphael's burning body was frozen in place, and no matter how much he struggled, he couldn't move an inch. Under the astonished eyes of the crowd, the 4 knights under the command of the final disaster descended into the starry universe without emotion. Open black lens bracket plague, death, war, famine. Close black lens bracket. Cabbage did not find the picture. Look at it first. Update after finding a new picture. Not far away, Lin Tian looked at everything, listening to the sound of the system worrying that he would forget, but kindly reminding him. His evaluation is very detailed, very detailed. Even the names are said in order from left to right. But what shocked Lin Tian was, these 4 were able to imprison a seraph in place so easily. How can this be? Raphael wanted to try to break free from this invisible bondage. But there seemed to be countless chains in the air, trapping him firmly in place. And he can feel it. His nearly inexhaustible vitality is rapidly fading, and it won't take long for it to dry up. Ants. Famine looks indifferent. He didn't even move a finger. Raphael's limbs shattered like an ant, and golden hot blood immediately sprinkled the universe. We are regarded as the apocalypse by the final disaster. The final disaster brings the rhythm of the eternal night here, and all resistance is futile. In an instant, all the people in the starry sky fell to their knees inexplicably at this moment. The overwhelming strength almost made everyone's heart tremble. At the same time, a common idea emerged in their minds. Face such a powerful and unknown creature. They have no chance of winning. I don't agree with the iron-eating beast clan. When all the people in the starry sky were trembling at this disparity in strength that seemed to be punished by heaven. The voice of the iron-eating beast clan is simple and honest, but they are not afraid. They stood up under great pressure. This is the starry sky universe. You outsiders are not allowed to run wild. As soon as the words came out, it seemed to ignite the clarion call of the resistance of all races. More and more races, no matter how strong or weak, stood up with force. Apocalypse night. What the hell is the starry sky universe here? Oh, what a bunch of boring creatures. Death smiled lightly, looking at these races that wanted to resist as if they were watching a joke. Destruction is the origin of new life. Accept the final disaster. Surrender to the final disaster. A new era will begin here. FK your fart. The iron-eating beast emperor held an emerald green bamboo pole. This is the starry universe, everything else must go. although there are several races among them who like to put on airs on weekdays. There are also many who love fighting and are not peaceful. It's not good, but this is still a starry universe after all. They are also all races under the starry sky. Now, as soon as this outsider comes up, he sets rules for these races that have inhabited here for countless years. Tolerate, hold up, I can't stand it anymore. The iron-eating beast emperor's bamboo pole shot out under the shining light of billions of stars in the sky, pointing directly at the death's head. Use this as the clarion call for counterattack. One race after another rose to its feet. The sound of fengming resounded through the starry sky. Under the curtain of the starry sky, the red lotus fire dyed all the races red, and it also competed with the dark red mist. Lin Tian stood in the distance. How shocking it is to see this vast scene in your eyes. He has never really seen thousands of years ago. But today, although in the mural, but the tens of thousands of races joined forces to unify the external scene. He is afraid that he will never forget it. Ice and fire overlapped, and thunderstorms shook the sky. There seems to be the sound of dragon chant resounding through the starry sky. But Lin Tian's expression was shocked, but there was an inexplicable depression. He comes from thousands of years later. At that time, the people in the starry sky had long been silent for a long time. No one knows, not even the recorded ancient books have ever been found. This means, they lost. Even if all races join forces, the ending has not been rewritten. Wrong. There is another family. Terran. Daxia is still reclusive in the mountains and forests and has not yet been born. Lin Tian knows that this place is just a mural, and it will not change the history that has happened in any way. But he was still curious. During this period, what did the human race do? Only then will the eternal night era, which had already descended thousands of years ago, be dragged on for thousands of years. And the group of ancient gods who were sealed under the blue star. All kinds of doubts, he wants to get answers here. Gunpowder smoke filled the entire starry universe. Alternating day and night, rivers and mountains are stained with blood. In the blink of an eye, planets collapsed one after another, and races perished one by one. The abyss is still endlessly devouring and assimilating the corpses of all races. When Lin Tian regained his composure again. Yes. 10,000 races, completely defeated. The dragon fell and the phoenix fell, blood spilled for 9 days. There used to be thousands of races everywhere, but now there is death and despair everywhere. Iron Eater Gundam's sturdy body stood like a mountain in front of the few remaining Wanzu. Its eyes are deep, and the bloody top is at the forefront. The four knights directly ignored the iron-eating beast emperor as if they were looking at a mayfly. Yes, it died, burned out the essence and blood in the body, and died of exhaustion. Of the tens of thousands of races, only 1,000 are still alive. Among them is the angel family. They are now seriously injured, pinning all their hopes on the unborn human race. The human race is so strong, it is impossible for them not to notice the current turmoil in the starry sky. Perhaps they are planning, preparing. It's just that the time has not come. All resistance is futile. Give up. Plague's skeleton white armor trembled slightly. He looked at everything in front of him, except the final disaster, surrender to the final disaster. Impossible. Raphael, who was already seriously injured, stood up with difficulty. 2 of the 7 archangels have now been killed in battle. Lemuel and Midaron both died in battle. Nearly half of the remaining 30 seraphs fell. The angel family suffered heavy casualties, but compared to the only other remaining races, they are good now. Holding the Red Cross Holy Sword, Michael led the remaining race, intending to make the last counterattack. The starry sky universe is sacred and inviolable, outsiders should be punished. Facing these so-called fearless races in front of them, the 4 knights looked calm. Indifferently, he glanced at the dilapidated appearance of the starry sky and the universe. In vain. Famine's tone was tinged with sarcasm. Surrender to end in disaster is your most sensible choice. Same as them. Far away, Lin Tian followed Famine's eyes and looked into the depths of the universe together. When he saw the identity of the visitor, the whole person was completely stunned. Michael and other surviving 10,000 races looked at the figure in front of them. Despair was born from the bottom of their hearts. Protoss. Only 2 races seemed to have never been born in this battle. Man and God. The marks of blood-red eyes were engraved on the bodies of each of them. It was the same as what Lin Tian guessed when he first saw these marks. The gods descended, as the strongest race under the human race. It seems, they were the first to give in. He was also the first to choose to surrender to this final disaster. The four knights nodded, but there was no approval in their eyes. In their eyes, surrender to the end of disaster, this is the end of all things. Pat, the red cross holy sword pointing high into the sky fell to the ground. Michael's blood-stained 6 wings restrained the crimson holy light. Immediately, he closed his eyes and knelt down on one knee. The angel bowed his noble and holy head. This scene seems to be the last straw that crushes the inner hopes of other races. Now, all remaining races gave up resistance at this time. But they did not choose to surrender, but quietly waited for death. Lin Tian glanced at the Protoss that filled the sky. There were 100 of them, and among them he saw an old friend of his. At that time, he was still so proud, with colorful black lights shining on his body. Sortoxin, he tilted his head up, and there was a small man's triumphant smile on the corner of his mouth, as if he was very satisfied with the surrender. Looking down, I wanted to ridicule these 10,000 races who swore to resist. But the next second, Sotoxin's body trembled, as if being stared at by some kind of horrified creature. What the hell was I afraid of just now? Who the heck is watching me? Lin Tian. What the hell, could this be a fetter spanning thousands of years? Pity, you are already dead. He almost thought you cheated on the corpse again, and he was so scared that he thought he had to hack you to death again. Above, the 4 knights looked at everything and said lightly, just wait. Wait for the rhythm of the long night to sound. Waiting for the arrival of the end disaster, said the plague. He released a poisonous mist that covered the sky. There is a faint purple light, even if it is a whole planet, covered by this poisonous mist, it will dry up in the turn of the turn, and finally turn into shriveled dust. The people of all races stood where they were, letting the plague enter their bodies, but they didn't resist at all. All the angels knelt on the ground. The plague seemed to have an autonomous consciousness and bypassed it. You will not die, but the plague will erode your body and let it die silently. During this period, wait quietly for the end of the disaster. The plague swept across the starry universe. In an instant, none of the remaining tens of thousands of people were spared, and all of them were infected by the plague. Howling, the angels silently retreated behind Tianchi, shoulder to shoulder with the Protoss. Their pupils trembled slightly, feeling deep sorrow at the scene in front of them. Michael clenched his fists tightly, his burning eyes dimmed at this moment. It lowered its head, blocked the sound in its ears, and closed its eyes so as not to look directly at everything in front of it. This is true of almost all angels. Lin Tian, who saw everything in his eyes, showed a puzzled expression at this time. The angel also surrendered. That's not right, since both of them choose to surrender to the final disaster. Then why thousands of years later, only the gods are sealed, while the angels are atoning? But the goal of atonement is not the starry sky, but the final disaster. Maybe there will be some kind of turning point later. Lin Tian's mood gradually calmed down. This is what has happened. And he is just a bystander, unable to enter the game, and unable to rewrite all this. What Lin Tian can do now is to understand all this, and then change the fate of Da Sha. It must not be repeated. The scene in front of me was illusory again at this time. Finally, under the endless plague in the starry sky, the picture changed for the second time. Starry. Lin Tian seemed to see the faint afterglow of the starry universe. A mighty force seems to be trying to fill the cracks that were torn apart by the final disaster. Lin Tian frowned slightly. Thousands of miles away, a path suddenly appeared in the white mist of the mountain peaks. One after another figures flew out of it, until the 4 apocalypse knights were above the sky. The final disaster. A figure in a black robe rides through the clouds, holding a whisk in his hand, and after seeing those struggling creatures of all races, his eyes faintly reveal anger. Looking at the scene below, the old man shook his whisk lightly. The green leaves shed nectar in an instant. The dark red flame was extinguished. The faces of the Wanzu who were infected by the plague gradually improved at this time. The eroded flesh and blood faintly showed signs of recovery. My human race came late. The four Apocalypse Knights showed surprise for the first time after seeing the appearance of the black-robed old man. Human race. Death looked at the old man in front of him, and then at the crack on the top of his head that was trying to be repaired. It's in vain. Is it in vain? The old man chuckled. Just try it and you'll know. Far away. Then, the old man with the immortal demeanor is the former human race. Although the strength is unfathomable. But in the face of those apocalypses, Lin Tian's complexion was ugly. But don't wait for him to have too much shock. When he raised his head again, already in a battlefield, many senior experts of the human race participated in it. Besides the four Apocalypse Knights, the opponents are the rebellious Protoss. As for the angel family, Lin Tian looked around. Dozens of them seraphs are fighting with two senior human races. These two human race seniors are good at knives. The sword intent spans thousands of miles, cutting mountains and rivers apart with one blow. But, for some reason, Lin Tian looked a little strange. Meow, why does it feel that the angel side is a little powerless? Hard to find a word to describe. 2 words, actor. As for the other side, the four Apocalypse Knights refused to accept the calmness just now when facing the human race. They were shocked by this. The Starry Sky universe, is there such a powerful race? Zan Zan brandished the sickle in his hand, and fought with a senior human race holding a spear. His proud source of war was bestowed by the final disaster. For a while, he couldn't force the human in front of him back. War Knight, the man with the long gun smiled casually. When I was hammering people outside, you were still drinking milk at home. Madness. The two collide. The power that erupted even affected the entire universe. Under the turmoil, Lin Tian also used this to see the situation of the entire battlefield. It's here. Lin Tian saw several figures that he was familiar with and couldn't be more familiar with. Happy old man. He carried the endless jug on his back, and the long sword in his hand traveled in the starry sky. Kunpeng swept across the sky. The figure is unrestrained, as if he has transcended the 6 realms. Dozens of gods died under this free sword. The Terran is the shadow of the Protoss all their lives. Traitors from all races in the starry sky. I can't stand you in my eyes. The old man Xiaoyao cursed. Destroy a large number of Protoss in one hand. Lin Tian also saw the toothless old man standing in front of death. His big skinny hand clapped the sword case. 9 swords come out. Swing away thousands of miles of starry sky with one sword. These are all the people who gave him the inheritance of the sword style. Behind, in the purple mist of plague that stretches thousands of miles, a handsome young man in white clothes and a mask can hold 10,000 spiritual swords by himself. And this scene, Lin Tian saw it in the heart scene. Didn't expect it to happen here. What was broken was actually the poisonous mist transformed by the plague among the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. It seems, everything is right. Lin Tian muttered to himself. System, are you there? What's the matter? Close black lens bracket. The sound of the system is very heavy. Do you have any relationship with these seniors? The system did not speak. Half an hour. Its voice faintly rang in Lin Tian's ears. Open black lens bracket. There are relationships. Close black lens bracket. That's right. Close black lens bracket. This system will help you, and all the people who died in this battle will help you, making the embers of hope in your body burn more vigorously. Close black lens bracket. After Lin Tian heard this answer, attention is once again on the battlefield. Stronger than the human race. Under the full siege of the 4 Apocalypse Knights and the Protoss. Also gradually powerless. The human race you see now lost most of their foundations before they were born. Close black lens bracket. Otherwise just these Protoss. Close black lens bracket. How could it be possible to compete with the human race? Close black lens bracket. The system's voice sounded a little excited. Are you okay? Open black lens bracket. Fine. Close black lens bracket. This system just looks a little angry. Close black lens bracket. The reason why the human race was born so late, everything is for. Speaking of which, Lin Tian seemed to feel the system's obsession. For what? He subconsciously looked at the gap that was torn apart in the depths of the universe. Outside the gap is an unbounded land built on the void. This battle is heroic. It was fleeting, but it seemed like months. Lin Tian walked in the starry universe. The human race mobilized their own family luck, forcibly mobilized the root power of the starry universe, trying to repair the gap that was torn apart by the final disaster. Close black lens bracket. But the price is that the foundation of most human races has been damaged, and many of them have even fallen on the spot. Close black lens bracket. Lin Tian watched a senior human race die from exhaustion in the universe. Unknowingly, his eyes were blue. This is Daxia. Yes, blue star. This is the blue star from thousands of years ago. Lin Tian looked at the familiar planet in front of him, and felt deeply in his heart. Otherwise, can this place be Mars? Close black lens bracket. Lin Tian. The system's small mouth is really sweet. Say more. I'd love to hear it. Speaking of which, this is Lin Tian's first time looking down on the blue star in the starry sky universe. And that vast and boundless continent is naturally the Great Sha thousands of years later. Wait here, quietly waiting for the push behind the mural. Close black lens bracket. At that time, you will naturally understand the truth of some of the things that happened thousands of years ago. Close black lens bracket. The system is finished. The surrounding environment began to change. In a blink, when Lin Tian appeared again, he was already in the blue star. At this time, the continent was extremely dark and cloudy. Thousands of miles of mountains and rivers are broken, showing depression. Lin Tian couldn't believe that the blue star in front of him looked like this now. A group of gods and shadows appeared in the sky. They are domineering and unscrupulously destroying everything they can see. The prosperous dynasties were destroyed one by one, and the simple villages were destroyed. Hundreds of millions of innocent lives died under the merciless offensive of the gods. Lin Tian looked at the scene in front of him. Obviously, at this time, the human race was defeated. Those senior human races who were in the starry universe before disappeared without a trace, and all of them fell. Otherwise, how could these gods dare to come to Blue Star to act wildly? But what makes Lin Tian feel puzzled is, the 4 apocalyptic knights who came from the land of no bounds did not appear. Open black lens bracket. They are still at war with the human race, close black lens bracket. The emergence of the system solved Lin Tian's confusion. The blue star is now in a state of emptiness, and those who can mobilize the source and have the power to fight have all rushed to the starry universe to confront Tianqi. The Protoss fell into trouble, and according to the will of the final disaster, they planned to destroy the foundation of the human race on Blue Star. Close black lens bracket. Lin Tian didn't speak, instead, quietly watching the scene that will happen next. I see. Among the dynasties destroyed by raging fire, it seems that a heroic spirit is furious. An old man of the human race, who is almost out of oil, walked out slowly. Inside the mountain, the young hero pointed his sword at the god above the height of 10,000 meters. Whoever offends my human race will be killed. It must be killed. For a while, the momentum of the human race on the blue star rose sharply. But, open black lens bracket, they can't win against today's Protoss, close black lens bracket. The sound of the system was like a pool of cold water, extinguishing the warm blood in Lin Tian's heart. Lin Tian, he was silent, as the system says. Now those who have the power to fight in the human race are fighting against apocalypse in the starry sky universe. Otherwise, thousands of years later, will the gods just be sealed in the depths of the blue star? The human race today is just an empty shell, so why are these gods, why are they sealed? Lin Tian watched tens of thousands of humans rushing up to the sky without hesitation. Even if he died, he never retreated half a point. The blood dyed the river eye-catching red, and the surging river wept and mourned for it. The gods couldn't stop laughing wildly, wantonly massacring the races in front of them who were dubbed fools by the final disaster. All resistance is futile. Now that the human race has no combat power, who can compete with my god race? The final disaster is an existence that all living things cannot contend with. Human race. You have today too. They look crazy. Frantically venting the anger and resentment accumulated when he was hanged and beaten by the human race. Lin Tian stood in the air and asked in a daze, the human race today is just an empty shell, so why are these gods, why are they sealed? Open black lens bracket origin. Close black lens bracket. All planets have original power, and they are the foundation of everything. Close black lens bracket. But wanting to mobilize them is as difficult as climbing the sky. Close black lens bracket. How difficult is it? As strong as the human race, but also to overthrow the power of the whole race, and even cause great damage to the foundation, does that count? Close black lens bracket. With the power of the whole family. When Lin Tian heard these words, his expression was a bit awkward. Thousands of years ago, there are as many strong and prosperous human races as a feather. Want to mobilize the origin of a planet but have to pay such a heavy price. But this and what happened afterwards are nothing at all. Close black lens bracket. The real feat of the human race is yet to come. Close black lens bracket. The sound of the system fluctuates enormously. The words fell. Hundreds of strong human races who were almost exhausted stood out from the deep forest. She was tearing up and down, forcibly draining the last trace of blood from their bodies. Instantly, Blue Star shook. It seems that an ancient dragon has awakened deep in the ground. The dragon's voice is hundreds of times stronger than the dragon clan among the thousands of clans in the starry sky. Suddenly, after the god felt the awakening of this breath, his expression changed dramatically. Origin. The human race actually mobilized the power of the source. The head god was covered in holy golden soul body scales, but the bright red eye mark on his chest was particularly eye-catching. After receiving the blessing of the final disaster, his strength has almost surpassed a large level. But when he felt the giant dragon that was about to wake up, his heart still trembled uncontrollably. The human race can actually mobilize the origin of the planet. Crazy. What a bunch of lunatics. Thousands of gods suddenly restrained their frivolous intentions after they noticed the giant dragon in the depths of the blue star. Turn around and want to escape. Only to find out it was too late. The torrential rivers turned into endless chains of bondage. Without waiting for all the gods to react, drag them into the bottomless crack. Long Shao gradually faded away, and the mountains, rivers and rivers returned to calm. The center of gravity of the human race is not here. Close black lens bracket. It is already an amazing feat that the hundreds of human ancestors here can mobilize the original power to such an extent. Close black lens bracket. Lin Tian looked down, looking at the 100 ancestors who forcibly activated their origin with their own essence and blood. The robe was already soaked in blood. His eyes were hollow and shriveled, and the skin all over his body was chapped with dense cracks. But there were smiles on their faces, and there was no regret in their hearts. I have tried my best. I only hope that the starry universe can survive this calamity. The ancestors of the human race looked up at the sky, and then their bodies turned into dust, floating in the world. Willing. The human race lasts forever. Lin Tian's heart is heavy at this time. Turn out to be. This is the truth about the ancient god being sealed deep in the blue star. It's not that the human race doesn't want to kill these gods. Close black lens bracket. But to fight again with powerlessness. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. They have reached the point where the oil is exhausted. Close black lens bracket. Let's go to the starry universe. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket over there. Close black lens bracket. What the human race did not only preserve the great Shah thousands of years later, but also preserved a glimmer of life for the starry sky universe and the 10,000 races that were wiped out. Close black lens bracket. Lin Tian looked solemn, and bowed respectfully to the places where his predecessors fell. Subsequently, he turned around and flew out of the blue star. The next thing to witness. This is the real feat of the human race thousands of years ago. Cosmic starry sky. Lin Tian looked around. The galaxy is shattered and the planet is shattered. It was like a natural disaster. The broken blade of Michael's Red Cross holy sword fell on a broken meteorite. And the other side, at this moment, holding the holy sword with only half of it left, it pierced straight into the chest of death. Black blood dripped down the sword. He looked down at the pierced chest, but the momentum on his body suddenly rose. His eyes were covered with ashes. Madness. Suddenly. An aura that made the universe feel suffocated suddenly appeared. Michael's eyes suddenly shrank into thin needles, and his hands trembled subconsciously. It's so stupid. The hand of death that has turned into dry bones grasped the broken sword that had been pierced into the chest lightly, to those who were not loyal to the end of the disaster. You, the Angel Clan, already have a way to die. His voice is like rolling thunder. Under the fury, the broken holy sword was crushed in the opponent's hands. Wah, what? without waiting for Michael to react. In that crack, the sound of the final disaster seemed to come from a distant shore. It's time to finish. Obey. Follow your orders. For a while, the 4 apocalyptic knights on the battlefield responded one after another. The pierced wound on Death's chest disappeared in an instant. The Song of Eternal Night is about to be played, and the angels probably won't have the chance to witness it. It's child's play to be disloyal to the final disaster. He called gently with one hand. The huge abyss suddenly enveloped the angel clan. This is the divine punishment sent down by the apocalypse on you. For this stupid act, atoning for the final disaster. Directly below, the moment Michael was swallowed by the abyss, his whole body was bitten by thousands of insects. It seems that something is crazily invading its body and assimilating its will. Michael looked back. That is all the people of the angel clan. At this moment, they are all calm, and seem to have accepted such a result long ago. Michael laughed miserably, letting the abyss swallow him. The angel family originally symbolizes holiness. But a few months ago, the final disaster struck. They retreated, after seeing compatriots from all races falling before his eyes. Michael did not dare to look directly into his heart. Its thoughts at the time really wanted to insert this holy sword representing justice into Tianqi's body. Not really. In that moment, Michael admitted. It flinched. After witnessing that only the 4 knights under the seat of final disaster have the ability to destroy the world. Its heart is only thinking of protecting its own people. Michael closed his eyes. It deserves it, along with its tribesmen. None of the angels complained at this moment. A few months ago. The moment they lower their heads, it should have come to this conclusion. Even when Michael stabbed the broken holy sword into the chest of death. They also resisted vigorously at the first time. But reality still doesn't help. This sin deserves redemption. Not for the final disaster. It's for all the races under the entire starry sky. Watching the angel family being drowned by the abyss. Lin Tian finally knew why the imprisoned angels on the 7th floor of the abyss appeared there. They are imprisoned by the abyss. Unable to die on one's own initiative. He can only redeem his illusory sin in endless years. Intel was assimilated into a different species by the abyss. Death dusts off his body. The abyss engulfed tens of thousands of planets in this starry universe. Now, there is only this one human race left who is struggling to the death. The 4 knights of the apocalypse came under the crack. They admit it. Humans are strong. If it is not destroyed, it may become a great threat to the end of the disaster in the future. It's really difficult. Hunger shook his shoulders. His tone was calm. He touched the sore corner of his eye. There was clearly a scar left there. It's the sword marks. Few sword intents are still in the wound. He looks back. This is an incomparably brilliant starry sky universe with 10,000 planets. It's like a scene of doomsday. The flame of the final disaster is burning everything in the universe. The final disaster invades our universe and invades our human race. The little bullshit knights are here to step in. Then hit. The sound exploded. A saber saint of the human race is bold and unrestrained, stepping forward drenched in blood. The knife intent splits through layers of space, causing circles of ripples. Facing such power and influence, the 4 knights of the apocalypse closed their eyes. The whole body was gradually covered by the terrifying breath of the end disaster. Boom. The red reflection is opposite to that peak saber intent. Cosmic tremors. The old man Xiaoyao was a little decadent at this time, and the endless flagon was broken into pieces. He gasped. The old man guessed well. The final disaster that you 4 talk about cannot come to this universe at will. Right. The conjecture is simple. You can even see it without using your brain. Since the final disaster is so tricky, then why did he refuse to come to the starry sky universe for so long, but sent the 4 knights under his seat? So what? Zan Zan waved the long knife in his hand. Some kind of blood was shining. The song of eternal night resounded. You human race. We still lost. The voice fell. The countless stars were swallowed up in an instant. Among the cracks, the unknown realms visible to the naked eye are trying to spread to the starry universe. Listen, this rhythm is so beautiful. Plague smiled, then put away the bow and arrow in his hand. There is no need to continue this battle, because they have already won. The melody is played, and the eternal night era is coming. It won't be long. The final disaster will assimilate this universe. Everything here will start all over again. Yeah. At this time, even Lin Tian was almost suffocated by this endless despair. Another human senior stood up. They are now seriously injured, but there is no fear in their eyes. The old man Xiaoyao sat on the sword and laughed loudly. Ignorant child, it's ridiculous. Do you really think that this battle was won by you? Facing the voice of the human race, death didn't take it seriously. The eternal night era is coming, how should the human race resist? Everything against. The voice did not fall. I saw that above the crack, the endless stars that had been swallowed suddenly brightened. The boundless starry universe seems to have lowered its own will at this moment. The power is clear and transparent as a torrent turned into a palm. In an instant, the crack was forcibly closed by half. What? Death looks back. He naturally recognizes the power that can forcibly close the gap torn apart by the final disaster. The happy old man laughed more openly. With sharp eyes, he looked directly at the four Tianqi, and his voice was sonorous and strong. Then now. Don't underestimate this universe. The starry sky universe, the human race, is not a place where you can run wild. This moment, shock can no longer be used to describe Lin Tian's heart. Mobilizing the origin of a planet is difficult to achieve. But now, the human race mobilized the entire starry universe. Death looked at the starry universe that has been attracted now, with a horrified expression, and looked at the human races who were almost exhausted, and dared not say, no wonder, no wonder. You are really a bunch of lunatics. His fists cracked faintly. No wonder the other party seemed to have experienced many battles from the very beginning. I see. This group of human races actually inspired the original power of the entire starry universe. Now, the old man Xiaoyao was panting with difficulty, blood seeped from his 7 orifices at this moment. Who loses, who wins? You human race, or really a group of hopeless lunatics? Using the power of the whole clan can actually mobilize the entire universe, so you are not afraid that the human race will be exhausted. Plague's right hand was cut with bloodstains. This is caused by the young man who used 10,000 swords to return to one. Exhausted, the masked young man in white stepped forward with a sword. That must be too small for me and the human race. He looked back at the blue star at the end of the universe. Terrans have done much more than these apocalypses say. What's the point of all you've done? Defeat. They haven't even used their true strength, so how can they be defeated? Although the human race is far beyond their imagination, it can only do so. The apocalypse came to the world, but the eternal night era has not yet come. If it is now, these human races are afraid that they will not hurt them at all. But at the moment, the 4 apocalypse looked up at the origin of the universe, which was fighting against the final disaster, and their hearts revealed an unconcealable shock. The origin of this universe can actually resist the final disaster. The voice of war was indifferent, but it was hard to hide the horror on his face. It's just a counterbalance. What the human race said is right. If the final disaster wants to come here, there are too many shackles to break through. Famine said calmly. He put away the weapon in his hand, and faced the many human races who were confronting him. You human race, you are not considered a win. So what if the cracks are repaired by the source of the universe? It's just the end of the disaster and the delay of the eternal night era for 1,000 years. When the end calamity tears the starry universe apart again, wait, you still have to lose, and everything here still belongs to the end calamity. That's enough. The old man with broken teeth carried the sword box on his back. We have pinned our hopes on thousands of years later. How easy is it for the final disaster to tear this universe apart? If he can come here easily, why would you let the 4 of you come? He laughed, and out of thin air with his right hand came out a bowl of rice wine that was still warm. Thousands of years are enough time for the race to breathe. The embers of hope will finally be kindled. At that time, the human race, someone will definitely stand up. Death's face was gloomy. The human race has already reached its limit with the power of the whole family to mobilize the origin of the universe. How can you be sure that the human race will be able to resist the final disaster after 1,000 years? Wait and see. The humans looked at each other and smiled. They looked back at Blue Star. If they just mobilized the cracks in the restoration of the origin of the universe, they definitely wouldn't be in such a mess. Because the human race is not so weak. But if the origin of the universe is poured into the Blue Star, They didn't say such things. After all, apart from their human race, only their human race would think of this kind of thing, or even do it. With the irrigation of the origin of the universe, the human race in future generations will only be stronger than it is now. Plus the things that have been pinned on for half a year. Thousands of years later, the human race will not lose. The fallen starry sky myriad races will surely reappear. Far away, Lin Tian watched everything that happened. The system answered everything for him. Just as the toothless old man thought. If the human race thousands of years ago is the normal version, so thousands of years later, it will be the great Shah of his era. With the blessing of the origin of the universe, it is the super-enhanced version of Promax. To be honest, the human race thousands of years ago knew that they could not resist the final disaster, so they tried every means to increase the upper limit of the human race, plus thousands of years of development time. Good idea, but the result was chilling. There are hundreds of millions of people in Daxia, but only one night watchman was born. But it can be compared with today's human race, and there are only awakened people above the 6th level. Well, Lin Tian's sigh was filled with too much helplessness. After thousands of years of placing the infinite hopes of the human race, the result. Boom, sudden, a loud noise resounding through the universe interrupted Lin Tian's thoughts. Hundreds of strong men assembled by the human race shot at the same time. Come again. The human sword blew blood from his mouth and shouted loudly. Then he raised his knife and stepped through the void, rushing towards the four apocalypse. The mayfly shakes the tree. Death is but a gesture of the hand. The saber intent, which had to be resisted with all its strength before, was scattered in midair at this moment. With the advent of the eternal night era, their strength will no longer be restricted in any way. As strong as the human race, it is simply powerless to contend. For a while, hundreds of strong human races were defeated one after another by the four apocalypse. What about the failure of this descent? Thousands of years later, you will still lose. All this is a waste of time. The bright red long knife in Zan Zan's hand was shining with raging flames. The power he unleashes at this moment has already faintly affected the minds of many strong people in the human race. Restlessness, uneasiness, and rage constantly impacted the hearts of the strong human race. Apocalypse Night, the endorsement of disorder. They were born in a boundless place, and they have the power to influence the entire universe. Wherever it goes, it is the beginning of the destruction of all things. The strong human race stands in the depths of the universe. They look at each other. Then some sort of decision was made at the same time. The torch of the human race for generations, can outsiders destroy it? This battle, waiting for everyone with me. Change the starry sky and the universe to reproduce the appearance of the past. Instantly, many strong people of the human race did not hesitate at all. They are like fading flowers that are fleeting in the pan. At the cost of blood and life, they forcibly increase their own strength. There was a bang. The starry universe was activated again. The four Tianqi stood under the crack, pale with shock. The oil is exhausted, and the lamp is dry, but it can still trigger the starry universe. The origin of the universe turns into a torrent, sloping down. May the human race last forever. The human race will live forever. This moment, under the origin of the universe, the armor of the four apocalypse gradually disintegrated. The connection between final disaster and us is gradually fading. Plague has a hard time. The clothes on his body were completely ruined, dense cracks appeared on his dark face, and blood flowed from his gray pupils. Let's go. I can't wait to lose contact with the final disaster. It is even more impossible to compete with the origin of the universe. The plague's tone was full of unwillingness, but there was no way. The final disaster has lowered its own consciousness in their minds. The cracks are about to be repaired. This time they underestimated the human race. Human race. Thousands of years later, the final disaster will tear this universe apart again. The song of eternal night will still sound, and you still cannot escape the fate belonging to the final disaster. It doesn't matter, the human race is enough for these 1,000 years. The old man Xiaoyao kept bleeding from his mouth. The strength that has reached the peak is like a burnt candle, flickering, and about to fade away. His momentum dropped rapidly until he fell into a slump. He didn't even have the strength to stand up, and his withered and emaciated body barely supported himself with the sword. I use my body to exchange for the prosperity of the future generations of the human race." The happy old man laughed more and more freely. "Across the world, you can be at ease. Everyone calls me happy old man." Lin Tian seemed to hear the words that he said to himself in the heart scene that day. The sound drifted further and further away, until it dissipates in this world. Happy old man, die. Immediately afterwards, more and more strong people of the human race burned their own foundations. The sword box on the back of the old man with teeth shattered, and the half cup of rice wine spilled into the starry sky universe. The young man's strength was exhausted, his mask was shattered, all the spirit swords in his hands were used up, and his life was coming to an end at this moment. Today, with the glory at that time, the human race pinned their high hopes on thousands of years later. Watching the fall of the seniors of the human race. The 4 knights of the apocalypse were also on the verge of serious injuries under the scour of the origin of the universe. Most of the dark red cracks have now been closed. The song of eternal night was forcibly interrupted. After half an hour, the apocalypse knight escaped from the star universe 1 second before the rift closed. What you see is the truth thousands of years ago. Close black lens bracket. At the cost of the lives of all the strong, the human race exchanged the starry universe for 1,000 years for blue star. Close black lens bracket. Now the starry universe will become stronger under the influence of the source. Close black lens bracket. But the eternal night era will still come, although it is not as ferocious as the one that came thousands of years ago. Close black lens bracket. As a sword-wielding person, the human race preserves the embers of hope for future generations. Close black lens bracket. At this moment, are you ready? Close black lens bracket. The sound of the system is calm. The content of the mural came to an abrupt end at this moment. Later Lin Tian, I respectfully send my respects to all seniors. The firmness in Lin Tian's eyes is enough to explain everything. This is his answer. Suddenly, the murals formed a vortex, intending to pull Lin Tian's consciousness out of it. He didn't fight back. Everything you see today. What seemed like months had passed, but to the outside world it seemed like only a few minutes had passed. During this period, he knew all the truth about thousands of years ago. And the reason why the gods were sealed in the depths of the blue star. Open your eyes. In front of Lin Tian is a crumbling black void. There is the bottom of the 7th layer of the abyss, where the angels are imprisoned. Snort. Not waiting for Lin Tian to react. I only saw Xiaobai hum slightly dissatisfied. Then waved it out. The majestic sword energy was mixed with a little primordial energy, beheading more than 10 four-winged angels in front of him on the spot. The chain was completely broken. Angel has escaped. The imperial capital, the headquarters of the Night Watch Division. Today, under the leadership of Huang Yunfei and others, Great Sha is almost fully ready for battle. Almost half of the awakened people gathered in the imperial capital. Wang Yangshi sat in the front row of the conference room. Here sits more than 80% of Daxia's top combat power. 6 of the 7th ranks and 1 of the 8th ranks. They looked at the date flashing overhead. It has been 2 months since Lin Tian went to suppress the angels. There is no news during this period. Not even an angel escaped from the crack. Boom! A loud bang came from the sky. Grey thunder and lightning roared above the clouds, like a natural disaster. It was morning, but the sky was cloudy. The entire Great Sha fell into extreme depression. All the people entered the shelter safely under the escort of the night watchman. There are enough food and resources to last for a month. On the screen, people in the whole Great Sha can see what's going on outside in real time through this special screen. This time the end is really coming to Daxia. Can we escape this disaster? It must be possible, because there are night watchmen guarding us. They are the heroes of Great Sha. With them here, Daxia will definitely be safe and sound. Similar voices sounded in almost every shelter. Many people bowed their heads silently, not daring to look directly at what was happening today. Rolling thunder and lightning flickered unscrupulously over Daxia. There seemed to be several figures hovering above the clouds. Outside the border, several gods who had been waiting for a long time appeared above the pass. Their faces were full of hatred that had been vented for a long time, standing at an altitude of 1,000 meters, looking down at Daxia below. Wait for those guys to break free from the abyss. It's the day when Great Sha perishes. Poseidon seemed to be impatient. I have to take out the revenge of the past. Do not worry. Torik flapped his wings. Big Shaw's demise is a foregone conclusion. According to the will of the end disaster. Let us play the prelude to the rhythm of the eternal night. Imperial capital, meeting room. Wang Yangshi's heart was heavy. The ancient god hasn't recovered yet. But the new god has come. Besides the big summer, there are countless stars in the universe. He has sensed these looming threats. The prelude to the advent of the eternal night era. This. After hearing Wang Yangshi's words, Huang Yunfei slammed one hand on the table. There are still gods. There are more than 10,000 angels breaking free in the abyss. Now there are countless gods in the universe and starry sky. Only relying on today's night watchmen. And how to fight against the gods all over the sky. Huang Yunfei looked at the thunder and lightning clouds in the sky. Gradually, the figures of gods peered through the clouds. Quantity, no less than 20. Wang Yangshi stood up from his seat. At this moment he was already determined to leave forever. Daxia is on the verge of desperation. The former has volunteered to suppress the abyss alone. Although they are night watchmen, their hearts yearn for the dawn. One step behind is the abyss. Because there are hundreds of millions of lights to be guarded. Wang Yangshi looked at the spear in his hand. Don't worry, boy. Uncle Wang is there for everything outside. All the night watchmen are there. He said. The gilt spear turned into a long dormant dragon. Everyone, get ready to face the battle. ... Within the abyss, Lin Tian is now on the edge of a cliff. The hole in front of him has already collapsed into a moat. And in front of him, more than 10,000 angels flooded the dome of the 7th floor of the abyss like a swarm of insects. They roared and rushed towards Lin Tian. Hiss. The number is quite large. Lin Tian gasped. The large number made him almost suffer from trypophobia. The crimson sweater is particularly dazzling at this moment. Lin Tian, with one sword and one person, seemed insignificant under the tens of thousands of crazy zombie-like angels. But he had no intention of backing down. Noob. He muttered lightly. Afterwards, Xiao Bai seemed to have received some kind of induction. The hair on the top of his head shook, and then turned into a soul body and attached to the wooden sword. Jade Immortal Sword Soul returns. The scarlet sweater on Lin Tian's upper body was windless and automatic, and he held a sword in one hand. The single wooden sword seemed to have a divine sense at this moment. I wield the sword today. Wukchi 3 Swords, the first sword. Starfall. Thanks for watching, please like and subscribe.